phone for someone if they need a language. We have a sign right up at the front desk. They can point to their language, and then we can call a number and get somebody almost instantly who can speak and interpret for us. What's new this year is we are going to start having signs all over our buildings that help people understand how they can access that service. So in their own language, they'll be able to read what they would need to do to ask for that help so that we can get that that interpretation service available for them. Also, as far as translation, in the last couple of years especially, we've been able to access more and more tools online that help us to provide translated materials. This is great because, as you can imagine, we don't have people in our district who speak 45 different languages. Thankfully, we have technology that can do that for us. So we have a website that's fully translatable. We have emails now that can be sent out through a system that translates it into the parent's preferred language. We have newsletters that do the same thing. And last spring, we started piloting a two-way text messaging. So I can send you a message in English, you can receive it in Portuguese, you can type back, and it comes back to me in English. So it's really been a great tool for our teachers especially to be able to have those conversations with families about what's happening in the classroom. This is just an example of our website. If you click down on the bottom, I think this is Somali, so you can just change the language, and everything that's available is in your own language. We have our community and family engagement specialist, which has been a huge, huge asset to our school district to have these amazing people in our buildings. They not only can speak the language, they also understand the culture, they understand some of the barriers that our families face and can really help walk them through understanding our school system. We've had a couple of them in our office this summer. Sandy and Diliana have been there, and it's been fun to hear them have conversations over the phone or working with people as they come in to just be able to serve as a understanding person who can help them through and navigate what can be a complicated system as people are coming into our school district. Jacqueline Bayless is our integration supervisor, and she's really going to be the one who can help families if they find a barrier, if something isn't working for them. We do have the Civil Rights Act that ensures that people have resources and that language is not a barrier, and Jacqueline is a great resource to families if they are finding some place where they're not able to get information or if they need access to some of these services, so she is going to be the one for them to reach out to. The next steps for us is to really provide training on this to all of our staff, and that will start next week. We are going to have principals have conversations in their buildings about what this plan looks like and how staff can access these resources, where they can go to find the things that they need if someone comes to them looking for an interpreter, or how to navigate some of our different systems. We're sharing this with families through our district handbook. You saw an example of a poster. One of the cool things that Jacqueline is helping lead our community engagement nights. You've probably seen some of these in the past, but she's being really intentional this year about having community engagement nights with different parts of our community, as well as just in general inviting anyone to come in and learn about things like this, help them navigate Power School and all the different technologies we use, bringing people together to sit in the room, our staff to sit in the room with families and actually walk them through these processes and understand our system. So there'll be several of those this fall and then throughout this school year on different topics, and this will definitely be the first one we talk to them about in September. And this is a living document. We can change this as we get new tools, as we hear from families of what's working or not working. It's really important for us to get feedback throughout this process. So as we roll this out to staff, we'll hear from them, like, does this make sense? What's missing? What needs to change? And the families as well, so we can make those adjustments and make sure this is really a good plan that serves and meets the needs of our families. With that, I will open it up for any questions.
Great. Yes.
This is great. Thanks. One, I'm just curious, does this, do language challenges and barriers manifest at all, like within classrooms? And are there thoughts about if that's an issue, how that will be addressed by the plan?
This plan is really about the family side of it. We certainly have things in place to help in the classroom. I am not the education expert. I'll look to one of my friends maybe to answer that one.
We have multilingual language teachers throughout the district in different buildings.
Okay. So that's kind of, okay. Yep.
So the classroom's being addressed that way. This is really just about how we're serving families.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, we don't have 45 multilingual teachers or staff that you mentioned.
No, and they're not experts in a specific language, but they're experts in helping kids learn a language.
Okay, all right.
it's amazing if you walk into one of our ML classrooms and see people working. I mean, they might have 6 different languages in the classroom, and they are able to navigate and work with students. It's incredible.
Thanks. You mentioned that there are a lot of these components that we already had in place in our district. Could you highlight a few more of like what are the newer pieces that came out of this plan? You mentioned I think the posters in the schools might be one of the new ones.
Yeah, I think some of the new pieces are how we communicate it to let parents know what is available to them. Some of the technology tools are newer. I mentioned talking points, some of the website pieces. Our newsletters, we switched to something called S'more within the last couple of years, and that has a feature that allows us to translate some of the, I think it's called Bright Arrow, which is how we send out all of our messaging. So those text messages and emails that you get from the school district, those are now all translatable. So those are newer tools that have been in place. Really, the biggest change, I think, with this plan is how we are communicating to families about what is available, and with staff as well. I think one of the things we haven't always done is work with our staff so they understand all the tools and how to use them and what's available. So that will be a big piece this year, is just helping them navigate what's out there.
Great, thanks. Anyone else?
Sorry, 2 questions. One is what does this replace? Do we have a plan previous to this, or is this replace sort of a patchwork of things, or what does this replace?
I think it's a patchwork of things. So again, we've done a lot of these things, but we haven't had it in a plan. It was just kind of, we're doing this over here, we're doing this over there. It wasn't as thoughtful or strategic. So what we're doing now, in part because we are required to, but also because it's just the right thing to do as we're communicating with families about what's available. So I don't think it replaces anything. It's just truly organizing it in a way that makes it easier for people to use.
Awesome, thank you. And then the second question, if I may. One of the other organizations I work with, Caron is the fastest growing community that they're serving. And I don't think I saw that up there, and I was just curious if we're seeing a similar development here, and if so, how do we address that, or if that's through a separate thing?
Not yet. So I actually just pulled the numbers last week of what are our top languages. Spanish is by far our highest. Hmong, Somali. Those are our top 3. And what's interesting is after those top 3, then we drop down to like there's maybe 20 of this, 10 of this, 5 of this, 1 of this. So it's really smaller numbers, which makes it tricky, right? Like we can translate in Spanish, that makes sense. There's 400 and some families or kids in our district that speak that language, so that makes sense. When it comes down to we have 5 or 10, it's harder. We don't have all those resources, which is why technology is so great because now we can use Google Translate, we can use some of these different tools that are available to help us.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? I was at a Caminos event, and I just want to give a shout out because it's related. It's not exactly this, but our family engagement specialists, we don't get a ton of time to really recognize them. And it's amazing to me when I go to those family engagement nights how instrumental they are in the dialogue between staff and families and the work that they do. And I just can't say enough. I know that was added a couple years ago, and they're so beneficial to our families. So I'm glad that you talked about that position today, and I'm excited for teachers to learn about this because I feel like they're going to be able to leverage, especially the two-way communication. My question was, with the translation services, do they come into play or can they be utilized during conferences?
Interpreting, yes.
Yes.
Yes, we
Okay.
definitely have that available.
Okay. Thank you. That was it. Right. Thank you for that update. I
you.
appreciate it.
Oh, we do need to take action.
approve.
Oh,
We do
that
need
is
to
an
take
action. Okay. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second?
Okay. And all those in favor of approving, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes
Thank you so
unanimously.
much.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to turn this next item over to Dr. Funk, and this is an action item for MTN agreement.
So as some of the board members here are aware, I think at least 3 of you initially, the school district used to have a transportation provider called MTN that provided transportation to our students, I think in the 2020 school year and 2021. And the there was a conflict with MTN as far as be able to fulfill the contract. And as part of that, the district sued MTN in September of 2021. Move forward to the spring of '22, and MTN, I believe, sued the district, and so they have been suing each other since, and I started in July of '22, since before I got here. With this lawsuit, we have been expending district resources because it's not insurance protected. It's because we initiated the suit. So we have been expending legal money to try to really complete this lawsuit. So there's been 3 attempts at mediation. The first attempt was in June of 2022 before I started. The second attempt, I think, was in July of 2023 that I met with the representatives from MTN and our attorneys. And at that point, MTN would not go below $1 million that we were going to have to pay them. So then we were scheduled multiple times over the last few years to go to court. It kept on getting pushed back. We now have a date to go to court in October for up to 8 days here in Washington County. And I talked to our attorneys. They told me that MTN had gone to a new law firm. And I said, well, to try and avoid court and more legal fees, let's see if we can settle this. So a few weeks ago, I spent a Friday in Minneapolis and in a mediation with the same judge, retired judge who's been working with us since the inception on this. And at the end of the mediation, at the end of the day, MTN agreed to withdraw their lawsuit if we withdrew ours, and no money would exchange hands. It's pretty significant because I think initially MTN was suing the school district for $15 million. And to get them to completely withdraw it at the end of the day, I think is a significant victory, I think, for the district. Unfortunately, we've expended a lot of legal resources in the interim. And, you know, as an aside, this is the 3rd lawsuit that I have inherited since I've been here, that were all initiated before I got here, and this is the last one. And so I think if we can put this to bed with not spending any more money, because the other choice would be to go to court, run the chance of a trial, and if we lost the trial, we would have significant exposure, because again, this is not protected by our insurance company. So my recommendation to you tonight, and our attorney's recommendation, Christian Schaefer, on this case, is to settle this agreement and both sides walk away with nothing.
This is an action item, so real quick, this is not a roll call.
I would do a roll call.
You would do a roll call? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Director Thielander with the second, and then questions, comments. Director Thielander?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Dr. Funk, you and your team. I mean, the 3 negative clouds that we've had hanging over our district for quite a few years, I mean, that's a big deal and a lot of, potential exposure. So thank you. I mean, it's great to have this one behind us, and I think it's prudent for us to move forward and be done with this.
Agreed. Any other comments? I saw your hand up.
No.
Oh, okay. I guess for me, I just want to say I'm relieved to put this chapter behind the district. I know this has just been an ongoing drag on the district itself, and important to note that transportation, safe and reliable transportation, is critical to our families. And I think the expenses we have incurred to our ongoing annual budget, I think we learned it was, $5 million as a result of some decisions to maybe ignore staff's recommendation, is a cautionary tale. And this sticks with me as a board member more than any other decision that I have observed. The long-term ramifications of going against a recommendation of the professionals who do this day in and day out. And it's hurting us now, as we can see with all the budget cuts. So I'm grateful to put this behind us. I'm grateful that we have a provider now that is, although the cost is more, they are safely transporting and they are reliable and they're a good faith partner to us. So And again, Dr. Funk, I just want to echo what Dr. Thielander said. Thank you for putting this behind us. I do think it would be important to acknowledge that there are other staff, even before Superintendent Funk came, who were dealing with this headache and kind of getting the ball rolling. So to those people, they know who they are, and grateful for their work on this as well. So, great. Other comments? Joan, roll call, please.
Dr. Gerstvich?
Yes.
Dr. Hucker?
Yes.
Dr. Kelsenberg?
Yes.
Dr. Lauer?
Yes.
Dr. Parker?
Yes.
Dr. Thielander?
Yes.
Chair Sherman?
Yes. Great.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to an Adventure Club update. Welcome, Annette.
All right, Chair Sherman, Superintendent Funk, and members of the board. As Chair Sherman indicated, I am going to give an update on where we're at with Adventure Club, and in particular, we're going to talk about enrollment first. So, oh, thank you. There we are. So what we did is a year-over-year analysis to look at where we are at the beginning of August. So you can see we have increased our overall in full enrollment. So there's a difference between full enrollment and partially enrolled. And I think those things are obvious, but just to state the obvious, full means that we've been able to accommodate all of their needs. Partial means we're only able to serve a portion of their needs. So as you can see, we've increased it, I believe, if my math is correct, is about 26% increase in overall fully enrolled students going into this school year. So we feel pretty good about that. Partially enrolled, we do still have 72 families that are in that position. I will mention something about that in just a minute. And then we have a wait list of 240. As a result of the transportation information coming out last week, we are seeing a lot of movement. It is not uncommon for us to see movement in our enrollment. It's a constantly changing element. It has so many different factors for families. School start and end times is only one factor. Their work schedule is a factor. Their family circumstances are another factor. There's so many different things that can cause this number to move all the time. Consequently, as a result of the information coming out from our transportation department, we are in the process of contacting 60 families right now to offer them additional care. So these numbers are in the middle of changing as we speak, and we will see the fully enrolled go up. So we're excited about that. This next slide is really just to once again show in an easier visual way to see the difference over the last few years and how we have started out the school year. That we have seen things improving in the last few years in our ability to serve families. We've also seen an increase in need, so those things do go hand in hand. There is obviously, this is not a new situation that Minnesota, as well as I would say nationally, we are experiencing a child care crisis. And really the major factor is that child care is very expensive if you're going to pay the staff the wage that is going to attract them. And so it's always this balancing act. How do we get to that spot where we are providing a wage that is attractive, but also not pricing the families out of the ability to afford the care? We've been fortunate that the state of Minnesota has provided some additional funds specifically to help us afford this cost without putting it on the back of the families. And so as a result of that, we are currently at just over $19 an hour as a starting wage for our Adventure Club staff. And we're pretty pleased with that. And the school board has actually helped us with that over the last few years to get that number up to where
Do you have
it's
a phone number they can call?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, right. Actually, if you're interested, 651-351-8300, please call. Particularly on the south end of our district, we find that that is where our greatest need is. And so we are desperately seeking individuals who are interested in working on that end of the district. Oh, and I did not say on a previous slide, there is an estimated need of about 20 additional staff. So
But then in the last 10 years, just so you understand, we have not been fully staffed at the start of the school year. The demand has outweighed our ability to serve it. This last year, though, and this is actually better than it has been in the last several years, we were able to clear the waiting list by December. And so we're hopeful that we're on that same trajectory. Some additional things, because certainly, you know, we want to put forth every effort to help families. So the community education team didn't just, this is first how we have been recruiting people. Sorry, I was already skipping ahead to the next slide. So recruiting efforts, we're partnering with other departments to offer full-time benefit-eligible employment, which certainly serves not only the employee well, but serves the families well too, because we find that they are a stable source of employees. We've posted on our website, we've done newsletters, postcards, social media. We've boosted on Indeed. We've posted at local colleges targeting our students who are going into education and child development. And then we've done advertising through the high school. One of the more recent developments that we're trying as a new tactic is that we're reaching out to the paraprofessionals through our principals to find out at our elementaries whether they would be willing to stay for maybe just an hour at the end of the day. I know they've already had a very long day, but if their schedule isn't exhausted, if they aren't at 40 hours and they're willing to stay a little longer, that would give us enough time to then get more of our high school students. They will have completed their school day and will be able to come to the school in need. So just yet another layer that we found and we took action on, pulling out all stops to make sure that we serve our families. And then finally, this was what I was going to get at, is some other things that we've been doing in community education, and hopefully all of you have seen this and received it. I've heard a lot of great compliments from many people. We were very excited. Yesterday was our first day of enrollment for the fall, and just comparing last year versus this year, first day of enrollment. Last year, our youth enrichment, we had 69 kids registered on the first day. This year, 359.
Wow. Yeah. Awesome.
So we're filling a need, and we've done that in part thanks to our enrichment coordinator, who has almost doubled the offerings so that families will be able to find activities that will meet the interests of their students as well as the time and need for their students. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, I'd recommend taking a look. My team puts together a pretty great catalog every season. So we have a variety of enrichment classes. They run 60 to 90 minutes, and that there are scholarships available through Youth Advantage. So we encourage people to reach out to them as well. All right, any questions?
Just really quick, if someone wanted to reach out for a scholarship, who would they contact?
For Youth Advantage?
Right.
So they are, I don't have the website off the top of my head.
But they would go direct to Youth Advantage?
They could go direct to Youth Advantage. They could call us and we can connect them.
Okay.
It is also referenced in this catalog,
perfect.
so they'd find information there. It's on our website as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes.
I just want to compliment the work. I got the catalog this weekend, or I saw it this weekend, and I was just highlighting all the things because I definitely noticed my daughter, who will be in kindergarten, and we are one of the families who need after-school care. But looking at some of those course offerings and thinking this is going to make things so much easier. Just to have even another hour at the end of the day.
Right.
So it was definitely noticed, and I'm sure definitely appreciated. So it was by our family, so.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
I was talking to you a little bit before the meeting, and I'll say it here on the record, is, so I took one of your groups to one of their summer, well, you have Adventure Club in the summer as well. And they do a lot of field trips in the summer, and so I took one of them. And the places we go, they complement the Stillwater kids. The Stillwater kids and the staff that are accompanying those kids. So I want to say that again. We just need more of them, it sounds like. If the paras, now a question, if the paras stay late, like you suggested, would that then move them into benefits eligible status?
I believe most of them already are benefits eligible. This would just be an extra hour to their day. So they're probably, let's say, 32 hours a week, which is a pretty common schedule. So that already has entered them into the benefits. So
Okay,
this would
great.
just be an extra hour a day.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
First, I'd like to echo everything on the enrichment classes. We signed up for a number of them, went through the category, and we marked the heck out of it. It had a lot of options in there, and so kudos to the team there. Also, just very impressed with how much work has been going in and the creativity and how to do some of the problem solving around the need in this care crisis. So thank you for that. One question. So as I understood it, the childcare is a pretty key component of, something we assumed as a board that would have to be in place for school start time to change. Did we as a board, or did we as a district, put any sort of like number or date that like, hey, we need to be able to hit this mark by this date in order to continue down this path, and if we are not, then we're gonna reassess? Or how did we address that? I just wasn't around, so I don't know how that
I can,
happened.
or you?
You can go ahead.
As a board, when we had the conversations around start times, I think the bench for us was knowing that we have existing wait lists. We had many families not being served by the existing system. So our goal was to improve. We didn't go into it thinking we were going to fully address and clear a wait list. So it was just to serve more families and to reduce the wait list just by trying something different. If you want to elaborate on
Yeah.
that.
Great question. I think the answer is we approved the switch a year and a half ago. And as part of the purposeful nature and how we did it, it gave us time throughout the year, the next year, to take a look at, okay, where's the trend going with our childcare? And, you've only been on the board since January, but I would say at least probably 3 times last year, we provided, Annette came up and provided updates to the board on the glide path we were on. And, we did not have a specific number in the sand, but I can also tell you the last time she was here was last spring. I think we were almost at 0 at that point.
For the wait list.
So pretty comfortable with the direction that we were going. And, this is something that I think was a key factor in this. Are we going to be able to support our families and not to make this any worse, but really try and improve what we're doing? And I think we've done that. But I think board administration was very purposeful about watching this throughout the past year. And it has gone up, but you can see the need has gone up. I think that has been the key. But, when I came here in '22, I think she had on the slide there, we had like 500 kids the first day of school, families that needed support. So, I think folks have heard me say this around the office. I'm pleased but not satisfied, and I think that's the direction. But you and your team have just done a remarkable job.
Thank you.
Just keep up the great work.
Absolutely.
And I think this is an area too, just when we ask for input from the community to make student-centered ideas better and stronger. This was something that the community said, delay it a year. Wait, we really want you to delay the implementation a year so that we can make plans, so we can be thoughtful. And I think that really listening to that feedback from the community helped significantly. So I think that was just a great example of how a student-centered idea from our administrators that's in the best interest of our student learners can be made stronger when we listen to the community as well. So, but I would just like to echo the comments here. Your team has done outstanding work, and I'm sure there are other people in this room who have been pitching in to help, and just the amount of updates to the board. This is just a model of really good hard work. So thank you very much and appreciate it.
It really was the work of the team. They did an exceptional job. Yes.
Great.
Can I just make one quick comment? You guys have covered most of what I wanted to say, but one other piece, in having that conversation about start times, I feel like childcare came onto our radar because of that conversation, and because we were listening to families and their concerns about the structural impact that's going to have on our district and on their daily lives. So I feel like that conversation facilitated these changes, and I am very happy with it. This is quite frankly exceeded my expectations. I mean, given it's not fixed, definitely not fixed, but the fact that we are serving so many more families, and we are reducing our wait list at the same time. And it's just really impressive work. So keep up the good work, and it is a childcare crisis that we are trying to serve that need in the community, and we're doing our best, and we are making good progress. So thank you for all your work.
So I know that you said that the 240, you were likely taking sick. Did I get that right?
So 60 more families are receiving a phone call to say we have additional space. Now, they might be part of the special, partially served.
Okay.
Or they might be part of that, they haven't been served yet and might move either to this partially or fully served. It's
Okay.
very dynamic, the
But
whole
60 is
thing.
coming off of the numbers that we're
60
looking
more
at.
people will have more service.
That is wonderful. And then if there are changes and people need childcare and they're just finding out now,
Right.
How do they get on the wait list?
That same
Just-
phone number that I called,
Okay.
that I mentioned earlier, or they can go on our
Perfect.
website.
And I'm assuming too, would it be the early childhood website would have a link to?
Community Education Adventure Club webpage would
Okay.
have the information, yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Not to go backwards, but we want to make sure everyone is on the wait list if they need the care, so.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Speaking of that wait list, is it a first come, first serve, or is there any kind of preferential treatment for anybody?
That's a very good question. So we offer our current families, as we prepare for enrollment for the next, or for the following year, we offer our current families a window in which they can enroll first. In part because their children are already in our program, and that consistency of care is such an important part of their life that we wouldn't want to have to take it away from them if we can prevent that. So we have those families enroll first, and then we invite new families to come in.
All right. Well, thank you very much for this update and for your continued efforts. Very appreciated. All right, our next update is a transportation update. A new face.
Well, good evening again, Board Chair Sherman, Superintendent Funk, and members of the board. Thanks for the opportunity to share a brief transportation update, and I'm joined here by Tom Risley, who is our new transportation supervisor. I will let him speak about a few things here in a moment, but I just wanted to share some good news with you. We have, as you know, had some rough patches with transportation in the past, and we have really been intentional this past year in making sure that we are doing everything in our power to smooth that and make sure that families have a really good start to the school year, knowing how important it is for buses to show up and kids to have a place on that bus. So in the past year, we've done a lot of work. We've made a lot of intentional decisions to try to make sure we have a smoother start. And what I'm really excited to share is that our rough bus routes are already out. Parents received an email on July 28th with information about bus routes. That's 3 weeks early before the start of school year, which in my time, 17 years in the district, is the earliest that I can remember them ever going out. And what that has been able to allow us to do is address the issues, because there are always issues with bus stops, with times, with where the stop is, just different things that we have to work through. So that's giving our staff a lot more time to respond to those parent requests and address the issues as they come up. So our team has been very busy since that time. We have a new help desk ticketing system, which has also been one of the improvements we made, and that has let us more efficiently respond to the requests that parents are sending in. In previous years, we were getting emails, phone calls, more phone calls from the same family over and over, and so it was bogging down our system. We had different people working on different elements. It was the same families that they were working with. It was kind of a mess. And so with the ticketing system, we can track who's handling what ticket, where it is in the process, how long it's been out there, so that we can make sure that we're really efficiently responding. So that's been great. And to date, since mid-July, we have had 620 tickets, just to give you an idea of how big this is. 620 tickets that have passed through that system. Every time we clear a bunch, people get excited, and then all of a sudden it's back up there. So I think as of this afternoon, it was maybe around 160, 170 that we're still processing. So I think From a parent perspective, we just want to say thank you for your patience. Thank you for using the ticketing system. It makes it a lot more efficient for us than phone calls or emails. And we are working as fast as we can. I think the average time is about 3 to 5 days. Some of them are a little bit more complicated and take more time, so that's kind of moving it up to more of a week timeline versus being able to turn around really quickly. I just want to give a big shout out publicly to our transportation team, Tom and Amber, Julie, and Carla's a new addition who's helping support out this team. And then we also have a lot of other people at Central Services that are lending a hand, answering phone calls and helping parents work through things. So a huge shout out to all of those people who are working so hard to make sure that we have a good start to the school year. With that, I'm going to introduce Tom again and let him say a few words too.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Good evening, Board Chair, Dr. Funk, and board members. I just have a couple bullet points I just want to go through. As I know, I've met some of you. It's great to be here. We have made really good strides so far. I want to really echo what Carissa said for the team recognition. Since I've been here, the overwhelming warmth and greeting from day one, when I was first working with Mark, and I had numerous people daily in and out of my office just welcoming. It gave me a really warm feeling, great place to be. And I just want to echo that because that's something, I mean, Dr. Funk's even come into my office with his cup of coffee a couple times and just literally closes the door and asks me, how's it going?
That's
I mean,
awesome.
you don't have that every day. And that really strikes me as a place that really wants to elevate. So with that being said, I just want to really thank Carissa, Julie, Amber, and Carla. I tell you what, they're the A-team. They get a lot of stuff done behind the scenes, and we all know what that's all about. And I'm hoping that I can just fulfill their needs to step us up in even a better direction. So with that, I want to cover you've had a lot of challenges in the past and a lot of decisions that are not easy. And as a parent's view, I've already talked with some of them of going, these are hard decisions. And what's multiplied that factor is I have to be the bad guy at some point to help centralize because everybody wants to stop at their location, but yet the next call is the bus ride's too long. So trying to balance that is I don't have the magic wand, and we only have so many resources, and the cost of those resources are going up every year, not going down. So we have to really, really watch that. Working together here at the table collectively, and then also parents. It's a team effort across the board. They're challenging, but they're doable, okay? I wouldn't be here if I didn't think they were. You know, I've been doing transportation. I started counting the years, 38 years in transportation. Starting as a bus driver, drove up through last year, and I still miss the kids. I really do. So I applaud you for driving yet. That's awesome. I just, in my position, I can't, which is fine. I've been offered, but I'm busy enough. But it's one of those, that experience of knowing those bus stops and what the criterias are and what's doable and what's not, you know, for the safety of the kids and then also what's right. So big thing is focusing on communication between the board, myself, through Dr. Funk, and just being efficient and sustainable. And those are the key elements. Just trying to do the best that we can. There's always room for improvement. You know, I've always shared this from day one with you. Our bus ride is there. I want to try to make that a fulfilling obligation with the district, but also try to keep those dollars and cents in the classroom because our kids are coming here for an education. The bus ride is on the convenience side, and we need to do it efficiently and safely. There's a fine balance there. So with that, that's all I have.
Wonderful. Welcome to the district. It makes us really happy to hear how warmly you've been welcomed and your initial impressions of the district. So proud to call you a pony and looking forward to just seeing your expertise applied to our district. And we know that there are challenges and some opportunities that can be that we can actualize here. So we're excited to have you do that work. Is there any questions for Tom?
Sure. So, yes, I did meet you over at Lake Elmo, and we talked for a while, and you got some background here, so let's, let's make that translate into what we're trying to do here. You said 620 tickets. What are the nature of these calls coming in? Is it just people wanting a ride, get us on the schedule, or something else?
All sorts of things. I mean, some of it is just about maybe a problem where we had a stop that should be moved someplace. I mean, that happens occasionally. Others are more complicated. I think the most challenging calls that we have are the ones where we have the 2-mile no transportation zone that we put into place because of the budget. And that's a long ways. And for some families, that's a true hardship. And so we get a lot of really difficult conversations where we have to explain why we're not able to provide busing. I think those are probably the most challenging. You can talk more about what you've seen.
Sure, absolutely. So when they're going through the ticket process, if it's a simple bus change, I know Amber's helped out. Julie and Carla usually step in and they'll make that adjustment. We kind of built these responses a little bit to communicate that with parents if we're able to or not to. Those more difficult ones usually came to myself, and then I would discuss with Carissa. And we would base those on looking at some of those were, I just had one that's a couple hundred feet. It's 500 to 700 feet for a 7th or 8th grader to walk that. Now, each scenario is different, right? So looking at the street view is one. Looking at the nature of the stop, looking at the age of the student, looking at the line of sight, because our system is centralizing because we do have the criteria walking up to a half mile to a school that's elementary, and now it's 2 mile for our middle schoolers and our high schoolers, right? The criteria that we have set in our system for routing is up to a half a mile walk to a bus stop. But looking at some of those is just, I'm not gonna have a kindergartner walk a half a mile, but would 0.33 be doable for a 8th grader, 9th grader, 10th grader? Depending on the scenario, yes. So just looking at those criteria, because within that 2 mile, we're requesting those parents walk. Now, there's a lot of criteria within that, and that's just in the ticketing base. Some of them were just asking about that. Some of them were asking, they might want to try to get switched. A lot of them at the beginning were open enrollment. We had a discussion because past years we turned that down, and looking at the numbers, I did a quick synopsis, just looking at going for the 290, 300 and some students for out of district that we were transporting, over 100 of those were coming to the public side. And we definitely don't want to turn those away because the crisis that we're in now. And just through conversations, let's get those routed, but trying to figure, and trying to balance those. And it was a very good move on the district to open that. To release those rough routes. I'm a true believer in giving those parents, because having that passion with that, they have to have time to plan, and every year if we have to make adjustments, they have to be able to adjust. Because what I've noticed just peeling that onion back on some of these is it's been pacified and it's been allowed, even though at this level it says we're not to be doing that. And that puts me in a bad spot. But it's just the position I have to be in of we have to do that. It just, you can't give here and take away from there in the same scenario. It's not fair. It's not right. So, does that kind of answer that question?
Yeah, that helps.
One other thing to remember too is this is the first year that we've done the opt-in process where we've had families notify us if they need transportation. We used to just route all of our elementary kids, so that's been a different process too. So there still are some families who are like, oh, I forgot to do that, or I didn't know I had to do that, but we're still trying to get on buses. But I would say overall, most families seem to have been aware of that. We'll see what happens on the first day of school if they're like, where's my bus? Like, you didn't tell us you needed a bus, so we'll see. But overall, I think people just want to talk to us about the actual placement of a bus stop or a time or something like that.
And we all know, as a bus driver to bus driver, most parents and students think that the bus route stays the same, the stops stay the same. And I've been explaining to parents, no, the buses are reevaluated every year and the placement are looked at every year. Because I truly, once we get into the groove, I want to release the routes earlier. We'll be working on this stuff in the spring, so we're not at such a rush. I came on board in April. It was way too late for that. Plus, you were already taking a new software throughout its first year of course and trial and error. That's a huge tasking by itself. So we have a lot of steps here. but we're making great headway, and it's just, it takes time. You know, I've told Dr. Funk, it takes about a year to understand everything, and then 5 to 10 years to implement. So we'll get there, so I'm all ears.
Thank you. Any additional? Yes. Dr. Miller?
Would you refresh my memory, how many kids are we talking about that actually end up signing up, ballpark?
All together, so we're looking at a little over 7,000 in the total transportation. So you're looking at, the last time I looked, it was about 7,400 on the transportation side. And the thing that Carissa was talking about, the re-signing up for a bus, before I even started, I came here on a couple operation meetings, and I highly suggested that as well, because you reach out statewide, a lot of districts do that. More districts than what you would believe actually do that reset every year. I believe in that, because what it does is it helps us utilize our resources. They need busing or they don't. What we need to do is we need to clearly clean up our internal piece of that communication, and that just takes time. Yeah. And it makes more work on us on that one side, but if we do it in that March, April timeframe, we can already start building that route structure for next year and get a good placement of where are we at for next year's already. And then once we kick summer school off, it's just finalizing, and then we release. So it's doable, yes.
So first off, thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
You know, so far, this seems like it's been a significantly better process than previous years, so congratulations to you and the whole team, so appreciate that. Couple questions from me. One is on the, let's say if I was checking my email, who would I be looking for an email from?
So the email comes out the same way that we send out our school newsletters, all of the different things. It's used through a system called Bright Arrow, but it comes and it'll say a message from Stillwater Schools, or it'll say from the transportation department. So it looks very similar to what you get your school newsletters from.
And if we are concerned that we may not have gotten that email, or
Is this a hypothetical question?
how would we reach out?
Talk to the guy sitting next to you.
A family, we would encourage them to use the help desk ticketing system, put them a ticket to check if they didn't receive that communication. It could be for some reason the communication didn't get to them, or it could be that for whatever reason they didn't actually contact us for the opt-in. So we will definitely take care of that. You might just be able to talk to us afterwards, and we'll see what we can do.
Theoretically.
Can I
Yes.
ask you a quick question? So if all the routes are out, does that includes the hubs too, I'm assuming, or just everything is out in 3 weeks early?
Yes,
Fantastic.
everything is out.
This is a remarkable difference from last year.
That's 2 years.
In the last couple years. So I really appreciate, I mean, you guys really have a great structure built out in order to better support our families, and I really appreciate that. Given we haven't had the first day of school yet, but I'm trusting that all this structure will pay off on the first day and first week of school, even though I'm sure there will be bumps as always. But I just want to say thank you for all your hard work and the whole team that's been doing it. It's clear you are a very passionate guy about transportation, and I appreciate that. And I particularly appreciate your adherence to the budget, and understanding how challenging it is. Our transportation budget, we've gotten an update. It's pretty big, and we really do want to keep those dollars in the classroom, as you said. So, and after coming off a big budget cut year, I know those are really tough conversations to have with families, and we do want to help and accommodate as much as possible, but there's a price tag every time we do that. So I really appreciate you holding the line on that and keeping the big picture in focus for us. So thank you.
A lot of it is collective. I always told my team, I said individually as a stick will break easily, but as a tripod, it's nearly impossible to break. And that's where, Dr. Funk and I have talked. We just need to be on the same sheet of music. I said, I don't care which direction we go, because I said the last thing anybody wants is to hang out on a limb by themselves. Yeah. And it's not just us here, it's our parents. And a lot of it is educational. It's tough. We all have to be responsible to where we're at. It's just a lot of moving pieces. And I do have a passion, because I've been at the front line driving and dealing with those parents and angry, and right at the door, almost I can feel their breath right there. And also I can feel their breath on the phone, and since I've been here, I've been called almost every name in the book, and that is, it is it is part of the course. And I understand that. It's not like I take it personal, but I just want the parents to know of going, I'm not cold-blooded, I'm not mean. It's just, we have a very distinctive line that we have to follow. This is a tough decision. It's not easy. Because for this board to make that decision and to follow suit with that, going from a 1 to a 2 mile, that's huge. That is huge, but I see the dollars and cents to that. And it's a hard one, and hopefully we can turn that around. If we can start utilizing our resources and get it under control and manageable, then maybe we can start reducing some of
Right.
those reins a little bit. So it's just, but it takes time. It takes time. It's not overnight. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Yes.
Oh, just one last thing. Once we have the routes out and school starts and things are sort of solidified, will we hear back on report on where things are at and sort of a final readout?
Couple thoughts on that. I think what you're gonna hear is, you'll get a report on where things are at, but I also think at some point, Tom, I'm not gonna pin you down, but
Go for it.
we are, at some point, mid-school year, you're gonna get a report from Tom on how we can take a look at some real efficiencies that we've already identified, that we can maybe take different approaches to how we're transporting some of these kids. And he's on his radar, he just hasn't had time because of the start of school, but I think you're gonna, we have some opportunities here that we've identified, so that'll be part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you again for that update, and again, thank you for the hard work to you and your team, and we appreciate it, so.
No, thank you. And again, I can't thank everybody here with all the support, and then also the team back, Julie, Amber, Carla, because I know some of them are watching. So, well,
Thank
and
you. If you're watching,
important.
thank you.
It's important, and I want the
Yes.
families to know it's not just one person. We have a whole lineup of people that are very passionate with this, and I can't express this new ticketing system. I'm always a believer in documentation. I love that because there's traceability to when I reported, when the parent reported, so we can stay up with those. Because it gets really confusing, a phone call, email, I even took a call on my personal phone, and just trying to balance those and making sure which ones are duplicates and which ones aren't. So that gets really challenging.
Yeah.
So it just, you want to make, I can't express that enough. That was a huge saving. It was a little difficult. We kicked that off, about 2 days before we actually released the routes or so?
A week. We had a
Week,
week to
okay.
test it out.
But it was like, you know what, I was like kind of nervous, but I was like, you know what? Once we got in the groove, I was like, oh, this is
better.
this is really nice. Because then they have fun. They start issuing their boss the tickets. Well, this one's too hard. We'll let the boss do it. It's kinda
I
funny.
love it.
So,
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. and
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yes, you too. All right, after that update, we will move on to our next update, which is multi-grade classrooms. And we have Caitlin, the Executive Director of Elementary Education, to explain how this came to be and a little bit more detail for our family and for the board.
Chris Carlson's up here as well.
Oh, Chris.
Brought a friend.
Welcome.
Brought a friend. This was very much a joint effort from the staffing and operations side with the educational side. So I felt like having
Yeah.
both of us here to talk through any questions you have about this decision, how we got to it, how we're supporting implementation of our multi-grade classes. So
Great.
with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Chris. She can talk you through some of the logistics and decision-making processes and staffing, and I'll talk about the educational components.
All right. Well, good to see all of you. So tonight we'll talk a little bit about our enrollment patterns, budget realities, and the staffing decisions that we've made for 25-26. As you know, it's not unusual for our enrollment to fluctuate from year to year. Historically, when we've seen our class sizes increase, in certain buildings, we've been able to respond by adding sections. That's been our go-to approach for the last
10 years.
Yeah, 10 years. In order to keep us within the board-approved ratios, class size ratios. This year, the picture has been a little different. The legislative session ended in June, and at that point, we recognized the need for additional budget cuts. It became clear that we would not be able to add new sections for the coming year. Back in the spring, we established a staffing cap or goal of 140 FTE in our elementaries based on the enrollment at that time. And in previous years, as I said, we would adjust that, but we were unable to do that this year due to our financial constraints. In order to keep the class sizes reasonable and still provide support to all the students, we decided to use the multi-grade classroom model in certain areas. Multi-grade classrooms are not new to Stillwater, and in fact, most recently we used them in 2015. They've been a way to manage enrollment while maintaining quality instruction and support. This approach also allows us to preserve staffing levels without exceeding our budget. Throughout the late spring and summer, our leadership team met weekly to monitor the enrollment numbers and class sizes against our board-approved ratios. As we saw enrollment rise in certain buildings, we began running scenarios that included the possibility of multi-grade classrooms. These decisions were made incrementally as data evolved, and we communicated each change to the affected staff and families as soon as those changes were finalized. In short, our approach this year has been to manage enrollment fluctuations within the staffing resources that we have while preserving class size balance and student support. Multi-grade classrooms provide us with a responsible, student-centered way to achieve those goals within our current budget constraints.
So with that, educationally, as Chris mentioned, this isn't necessarily new. It's not new to Stillwater. It's not new to public education. And like many things in public ed, there are trends. And there was even trends where multi-grading was desired and ideal, and because there are documented benefits for students, specifically around student agency and learning, leadership skills. Generally, research shows that multi-grade classes and same grade classes, academic achievement is about the same, but students in multi-grade classes have more confidence, more empathy, and report feeling happier and connected in school, and have earlier developed leadership skills. So there are definite social emotional benefits. With that, our teachers are very, very skilled in differentiation. You can have a class of 25, 30, fourth or fifth graders and have a diverse level of need from an academic or behavioral standpoint, and they're all in one grade. And that is also true when you have two grades, right? So our teachers are just very accustomed to meeting kids where they're at with what they need and making those adjustments and modifications on a daily basis. And so that looks the same, frankly, when you're looking at a 3-4 class or a 4-5 class. You're adjusting your instruction, your instructional modalities, and adapting those lessons. Our students will have access to their grade level standards and benchmarks. One of the things that we've been working on throughout the summer, as soon as it became evident in early July that we needed to start moving this direction, is our teaching and learning supervisors have been working on curating resources to support teachers. Our teachers who are identified to teach these multi-grade classes have been given an additional 7 hours of paid time above and beyond the time they have to get ready for the school year during workshop week. And we are partnering with the principals to identify what's the best collaborative teaming model. So for some schools, there's more than one multi-grade section, and they can make their own, we call them CAT teams, but professional learning communities, so they'll have maybe a multi-grade team. For other teachers, maybe they've been teaching, I'll use a 4th, 5th grade example, maybe the teacher's been teaching 5th grade for 10 years, and they're very comfortable and confident in that content, so they may choose to team with a 4th grade team this coming year to get a little more comfortable and have that kind of peer-to-peer access in that grade level. So there's a lot of flexibility to be able to meet the needs of teachers, and of course our teaching and learning department is queued up to support them kind of on demand as needed. Okay. Questions?
Can I just ask, related to the budget, my sense is that, obviously in past years, might administration have made a decision to go to a fund balance that now is depleted for a situation like this. Is that fair? I don't know if that's a Dr. Funk question or a...
Well, there's really not been much of a fund balance since I've been here. So we haven't done that, but what I can tell you...
My guess is this would be a situation where a healthy fund balance would be
So,
advantageous.
yes, we do not have a fund balance, so we have no cushion
Right.
to delve into. But the difference between this year and last year is this. Last year, when we talked through priority-based budgeting, we set aside, I think it was six staff members in case summer enrollment increases occurred. So we had a buffer. This year, because of the fact, the dual fact of we were cutting, $5 million plus an additional $700,000 impact we did not foresee, we had no cushion whatsoever. So it compelled us to take a look at different options. And this is the one the team came up with. I want to just thank Caitlin and her leadership and our principals. They identified this. We got the information out. We contacted teachers. We contacted families in early July. And then, as Chris mentioned, we monitor enrollment. I don't say it's daily, but a couple times a week in the summer. And we've identified, I think, another school that was at a tipping point, a couple of other schools that were on the edge. And we said, we're going to wait. And then kids would move into the district, and then, okay, now it's tipped. And so a couple of those buildings were notified later in the process. But we've been proactive in trying to reach out to our staff and support them as much as possible. Indicate to families that this might be coming, the class list. Our class lists usually come out.
They come out on Friday.
Okay.
So the way the parent communication has gone for these decisions is, we meet weekly and look at those numbers on Friday and make a decision and pretty quickly get on the phone with the principal of the impacted building to solution what is the best way to multi-grade in their building. And then once we have that solidified and we've notified and worked with the staff on who's going to be teaching that, we send out a communication to that school community, including staff and families. It's not specific to individual parents yet. That will come with class lists because class lists are also being developed and adjusted throughout the summer. So when the class lists come out on Friday, if a parent's child is assigned to a multi-grade class, there will be an additional specific communication that provides a little more information and background on that class and that teacher. So those will come on Friday.
Thank you.
All right, what does the multi-age MA classroom look like, perhaps an example, and how does that save us money? How is that affecting the budget?
Yes, so there's a handful of different multi-grade classes that we have. Most of them are either 3rd, 4th, or 4, 5 classes. The way that saves us money is if we have what amounts to, this is where Mark's math brain is amazing because he'll just tell me right now, but if you have essentially 2.5 sections worth of students, because there's board-approved class size ratios. So let's say we have 2.5 sections worth of students in 5th grade at this grade level and 2.5 sections worth of students at 4th grade. Historically, what we would have done is we would have staffed those at 3 and 3, and those class sizes would have been a little bit smaller, well below the board-approved ratios. In our current fiscal environment, we can't afford to do that. So we take those classes and we say, okay, we have roughly half of a section in 4th grade, half of a section in 5th grade. We're going to create one section. So that allows us to then do that for that section instead of increasing the overall FTE.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
Did. So if there's no difference in outcomes from a learning standpoint, and if they're better off social emotionally, why don't we just do it all the time?
It's a good question. That's why I made a comment that trends happen in education, right? And sometimes we'll adapt a trend, the whole open concept. At one point, Stonebridge was completely open, and now there's kind of like a hybrid open concept, right? Rutherford is still very open. So these are just all trends. There are certainly pros and cons to open classrooms, to partially open classrooms, to multi-grading. Everything comes with a pro and everything comes with a cost. And so It's a valid question. I certainly can't speak to whether we should or can continue this moving forward, but I think it is always something we should consider when we're looking at growing our fund balance or making fiscally responsible decisions. And I look forward to kind of watching. I made a joke earlier with Dr. Funk about how I love to take data. So I look forward to trying to figure out some ways to quantify this and track this to be able to better answer your question and say, you know what, maybe this is something that we're gonna continue regardless of our financial current state. So more to come. There's certainly good research around relationships, and I can speak to where we're doing multi-grade classes. Where we're doing multi-grade classes, we are looking at some of those relationships that are established. So if there's a fourth grade teacher that's now doing a fifth grade class, there may be a handful of students that had that teacher the previous year for fourth grade. Really good match, worked really well for the student, the families, and the teacher. There's no reason we wouldn't continue that relationship. And one of the things that I was, you send out those community emails and you kind of brace yourself, right? Like where you sit by the phone and wait. And I was very pleasantly surprised with the volume of parents that reached out to the principals saying, this might be really good for my child and here's why. And we also had families that said, I don't really have a problem with this, but I have concerns for my child and here's why. So I would encourage families to reach out to their building principal and share, is this gonna be a good fit for your child and is it not, and if why? It doesn't mean that we can 100% honor those requests, but it is good to hear.
Can I ask just really quick, how did you select the teachers that are doing this? And then how did you select the students? Because I'm assuming there was a strategic approach in terms of, maybe the younger grade is ready for that differentiated stretch to the next grade, or can you just speak to that a little bit?
Of course. There was a couple tights, like out the gate, I said, we will not do a 2-3 combo anywhere. That has to do with our curriculum. We just adopted all of this new literacy curriculum. It's grade banded K2, 3, 5. And it does not mesh well to do a multi-grade across that 2 to 3. So there were some kind of established parameters for those tights. Then I leaned on the principals because they know their teachers, they know their school communities, they know their students, they know their families. So the principals and I partnered on, here are the different multi-grade options. We talked through myself and that principal of the building through every scenario, pros, cons. Ultimately, the principal made the final decision of what to do and then communicated with staff. But staff had a voice in this as well, and I'll give an example. Originally, I sat with a principal and we looked at some different scenarios. We went with one. He reached out to the staff members to say this is what we're going to do and how we're going to manage it. And they called him back and said, actually, can we do 2 sections, 4, 5, and do it this way, and here's why we think it will be better. And so we were able to shift with the teacher input, and that had a lot to do with teachers saying, you know what, I'd like this challenge, or we feel like this will work well for this cohort of students moving through the system. So we've adapted where we can to those kinds of requests as well.
Great. Did you have?
Well, I was kind of going to ask the same question, but then too, like monitoring the kids that are entering into this experiment. Are we like over the course of the year? I mean, is there? And maybe this happens anyway. I guess I really don't. Just watching, making sure that the fit is the fit you were hoping for in a given room.
Yeah, we already have great systems in place for that, and we do that for all students. Same grade class, multi-grade classes. We have our SABRS information we take. So we have formal data measures with SABRS and with FastBridge. We have curriculum-based measures built in. We have anecdotal information from teachers and parents and students. We have student engagement surveys we do at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. So all of that information helps us make those decisions. Again, principals are working on the class list and have a lot of great information on students from previous years. And so, they can look at the cohorts of students and say, this child will do really, really well in a multi-graded. And I got a parent email saying, hey, my children were identified for the GATE program and we decided not to go. Maybe this multi-grade class option would be a great option for them. And so then I forwarded that on to the principal. So lots of thought has gone into this. I know it feels fast, and it is fast because it is a moving target constantly over the summer. And so we are, constantly monitoring and adapting to get as close to that bullseye as we can.
I appreciate you clarifying that you had parameters like around not combining grades 2 and 3. That makes, because I didn't know where exactly these grades were. So I think that's a very wise decision. So I appreciate that. And I think it goes without saying, I'm sure you say this every day, but thank you to the principals and the teachers who are flexible in getting this done for students and trying to work with you to make the best decisions possible within the budget parameters. I mean, we certainly have fiscal reality. So
We do, and I'm grateful to the principals for their support. I'm also really grateful to the teachers who are stepping up and doing this, some
Yes.
with a lot of excitement because they have previously been multi-grade teachers, so.
Director Parker?
Sure, thanks. I think we all probably want to echo that gratitude to the team and to all the teachers stepping up, because that's an interesting challenge to face. So thank you for that. And not to sound like a broken record, but again, thank you for the creativity and bringing solutions to difficult problems that we as a board are probably kind of presenting to you. So appreciate the hard work from you and the team. One thing you mentioned was, this is coming up fast, this is going through fast. What learnings did you guys have from this implementation, and what would you think about doing differently or not differently next time? Like, is this something, would more time be helpful, but because of the dynamicism,
Right.
That's not even a word, but because of the dynamic situation.
Fluid, yeah.
Yeah, the fluidity of the situation, the numbers, that seems like a difficult proposition to say, okay, well, it came fast, but we want to make sure that we have as much flexibility as possible. So any changes that you would consider in the future, any learnings that you take away from this?
Certainly more time is always welcome, but the point you made stands. It's very fluid, and it has always been very fluid with enrollment, especially in the summer. And so I don't know that that's a realistic ask. Certainly, it was complicated further this summer by the legislative session ending so late in June, and again, factors outside of our control that impacted our, fiscal flexibility, so to speak. But yeah, I don't know that there's a great, if we could do it differently, solution. I think we set some parameters for ourselves around, okay, we're going to meet a minimum of every week on this, and we're going to get that information, and we're going to make a quick decision to turn that around at that specific spot.
I think a key point here is the time was definitely a factor, but I think the other difference is this, and I think Chris mentioned it. The district hasn't done a multi-age since 2015, so 10 years ago. And so it was not in the water of something that we currently do. And so I think when the decision was made that we need to shift to this model, people internally in education, I mean, I've been part of multi-ages in a number of different places that I've been. Okay, we internally were used to it. Teachers here had taught it. But our families were new and younger, and they had not experienced it. So when we said we're going to make the flip to multi-age, okay, this is something the district has done before. I think the real lesson there is, okay, what does that mean? And give us some more in-depth examples of this. And I think the lesson in the future is, okay, well, now we have this as a tool that we could potentially use, and we can be much more clear with families that this is potentially what they could be experiencing down the road. And I don't think, though we had done it, it was a different generation that had done it. And so I think if I'm doing a review of it, it's how do we provide a bit more clarity on the front end of what that's going to look like. So, okay, they were aware, but really what does that mean? So that's my thought on it.
Thank you.
And then, does someone have, go ahead.
Okay. just to piggyback off that point, that was the reaction I got from a couple families who reached out to me. The families who had no idea, had never experienced it, were very nervous about what this meant. But those who have any kind of association with it were very excited and were able to testify to how great this this model is for students. So I think you're spot on in kind of maybe now this will start the conversations. And I had a question for you. I love that you are already thinking about gathering data and using this kind of as a little pilot to figure out what are those benefits, how can we track our kids. And I'm curious, on the teacher side as well, are there going to be any opportunities for our multi-grade teachers to get together at any point during the year or maybe at the end of the year? I know they're going to work probably within their own schools, but I feel like that's a great resource too, to get direct feedback from the teachers on how things are going and what they're seeing more anecdotally too.
Yeah, it's a very important point. And when I talk about data, there's so many different types of data you can collect, and it would be remiss to not also gather that anecdotal data from teachers. Certainly there may be less formal opportunities for them to collaborate across buildings. A lot of that is self-directed. Often I find if I just get out of the way, they do that on their own, right? So those are certainly the things that I have worked with principals to make sure that our teachers that are in those multi-grade positions know where other multi-grade classrooms are happening so that they can share resources and, work smarter, not harder.
Okay, thank you.
I think we'll look for some of the teachers also to get their feedback on how we can improve that process. What supports do they need? What worked really well for them as they go through this process this year? Because then, we're probably not going to dig ourselves out of a hole in the space of a year. So we may be right back at looking at that again next spring. And maybe if we are a little bit ahead of the game, we already have that groundwork laid. It will be just a little bit easier as we move through the enrollment and staffing process.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a board director, all of us wear many different hats, both as a, elected board member, as a parent, as a community member. And we have the privilege and opportunity to kind of see how, for lack of a better term, how the sausage is made, and all the work that happens behind the scenes. And I think it's just, I appreciate, with really three impactful, student-impacted type of parts of our district was kind of talked about today, both with Annette and, childcare, and Tom with busing, and now with the multi-age. And I just, appreciate in all three aspects just the comprehensive and the thoughtful approach that gets taken within this very fluid environment that we have to work within. Because essentially, it's a sandbox that we have to work within, and we don't have the ability just to make things happen. We just have to work with what we have. And so I just really appreciate all the time and effort. And you see that top down and that bottom up approach of that communication. You talked about with the principals and the teachers, and back up the principals and back up to you. And so I think I really appreciate all that work that's happening. And I would just ask families, just to be open-minded, and just know that we're all in this together, and to give some grace to all the hard work that's happening, because at the end of the day, everyone in this room is doing what's best for kids, and that is kind of always the North Star. So I just want to thank you for all the work for all of you, that's happening. So it's really fun to sit back and kind of observe and listen to all that great work that's happening. So.
I would love to end on that because you ended it beautifully, but I had one follow-up question related to what Parker asked. And because that's kind of where I was thinking is what were the factors and what maybe might you do different, or would you do the same? But now that we have the legislative and the funding for next year kind of a little bit more laid out, and I know this is probably too soon to tell because we don't have data, we don't know what the feedback is, but would you set aside funding now that to have those extra classrooms as a buffer? Or is this something families might see, have you made up your mind? Are you waiting to see? Or, now that we have the funding in place from the legislature, I guess, we have a more clear picture. How do you see that moving forward?
I'm going to step back and make this statement. that we have been living under this class size ratio number that was created, I don't know, 20 years ago, 20-some years ago. Is that the model that is best serving our district? And so, I mean, we've already had some preliminary conversations on, okay, yep, we're looking at combo classes. We're going to give this a shot. This, I mean, they are effective. But is this the best approach? Or are there other different approaches that we can utilize? And so I think as the year goes on, you'll start to hear us, just as the high schools looking at different, scheduling things that they're looking at. Are there different ways we can educate our elementary students? Not adhering to these, if you're in kindergarten, you have a 24 or 22 students, but if you're in, fifth grade, you're 32 and a half or 32 or whatever it is. So is there a different approach we can take? And so I don't have an answer for you, but I can tell you that that is something that we collectively as a team are just starting to take a look at. Is these board adopted 18 to 32 ratios, is this the best approach to educating these kids?
That's really good to hear, and we haven't revisited that just financially. It's an expensive endeavor to reduce those, so I appreciate that thought, and I look forward to information continued to be shared. I also know that I'm excited for this, having observed some of the gifted and talented conversations, because I know you're strategically putting these classrooms together, that it could be a way of differentiating. I'm really excited to see some of the data that comes off, and I'm sure there'll be things that will be a challenge, but I feel really blessed that we have the teachers that we have, and I know that they're going to serve our students well, and we have amazing families too, so I'm sure they'll share that feedback as well. Yes, Sarah.
Just one question about, from what I've generally picked up, there does seem to be sort of a general consensus that these can be really beneficial arrangements. That if they're done well, and I understand we're in a situation where we've been doing as much planning as possible in a short period of time. One question I have though, and just to ask a question about one particular concern I've just heard about the multi-level classrooms and the more grade-specific state standards, and a concern about being able to make sure those are both taught to in these combined classrooms. Can you just talk a little bit about how that's being addressed or how that'll be monitored?
Yes, so it's kind of, as I said earlier, it's not unusual to have students working at benchmarks at above or below a grade level in a single grade class. So that still exists. A lot of that comes down to strategic student placement, student class lists that our principals work on. And it's the differentiations. A lot of the standards, those benchmarks scaffold. So the difference between a fourth grade or a fifth grade might be just a smaller, just a tiny bit deeper of the depth of knowledge around the same concept. So while you're introducing a concept to a whole group in whole group instruction, you're getting at that standard, and then you can do some differentiated groups based on skill level, not necessarily grade level. Put students in small groups based on skill level and have them work on the standard and on the benchmark related to that standard more at their skill level.
Okay.
And that is true for fourth grader, fifth grader, third grader, whatever the age, you can be really responsive. So to me, this is something that's very comfortable because my background is in special education, right? And so at any given time, I might have had 10 students in my classroom working at 10 different benchmark levels. So when I'm teaching a lesson, I'm just scaffolding constantly. That's an extreme example, obviously, but it's the same concept about doing flexible grouping and differentiation within the classroom that our teachers are very skilled at. And teaching and learning is developing resources to support them. And something that I didn't know existed, but I've learned since we made this decision is within Benchmark Advanced, the curriculum that we just adopted, they have entire scope and sequences and classroom resources for multi-grade classes. So that was like a huge win. I'm like, look, we got the right curriculum. So we're gonna. Yeah, I know. I knew it and I didn't even know it. So we're leveraging those. And currently our teaching and learning supervisor that oversees math and science is working similarly to create resources in those content areas to support with that differentiation and kind of disaggregating those benchmarks for students.
Thank you.
Team effort all the way around. So thank you very much for this update. I hope it was beneficial for the community and for staff, and I know it was beneficial for the board. So appreciate you kind of coming in and doing this for us. Sure. And we look forward to continued updates. Great, thank you. All right, today we have, we're going to move into our workshop discussion, and this is going to be around enrollment, which has come up a couple times. So one way to look at revenue in the district is to look at our enrollment numbers and to be constantly looking at what we can do to increase enrollment so that we can increase revenue and hopefully assist in the budget challenges we have. So anyway, we have a team here to walk us through some enrollment. At the end of this presentation, we'll have kind of a board perspective conversation on enrollment. And that's going to just be kind of a fluid dialogue between staff and the board. So we'll start with the presentation.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for the opportunity to speak to this tonight. We've had a lot of conversation about budget, and clearly that is something that is very important, and that's what our intent tonight is, to explain a little bit about how enrollment and budget go hand in hand, how planning and enrollment go hand in hand. And I think the important thing to remember as we kick this off is that enrollment is really probably the one thing that's going to get us out of our financial problem that we're in right now, because with new students comes new dollars, and that is, we've seen, we can't just cut our way out of our financial situation. It's really about enrollment growth. So we had a director's retreat earlier this summer, and Dr. Funk was very clear with our team that our focus internally is to figure out ways to grow enrollment. And so as a director's team, that's something we've been very focused on, and we wanted to share a little bit of information with you tonight. And the purpose of tonight's conversation is not to go in the weeds on our enrollment numbers. That's coming later. So for those of you who are like, what's our capture rate and where are kids going and all those things, hold on, it's coming. We really want to wait until we have our official October 1 numbers. If we shared info with you now, it would be really skewed because, as you've heard, students are coming and going, and we just don't know what that final number looks like yet. So that's coming, and we'll also be talking more in the fall about fiscal forecast and how this all ties to our priority-based budgeting. But tonight we just wanted to give you a little bit of, for you and for our public, an understanding of all of these different terms you hear, like what's ADM versus pupil units versus enrollment counts. So we'll give you just kind of a 101 on some of those terms, and then how that affects us both from a funding standpoint and planning, and then have a little bit of conversation about what we're doing as a district to try to grow our enrollment, some of the strategies that are in place, and what our plans are this year. So I'm going to turn it over to Marie to talk about part 1, which is the funding side, and then Mark will talk a little bit about planning, and then we'll wrap it up with a conversation about kind of next steps and where we're going.
Thanks, Carissa. Well, and it's really hard for me to not go in the weeds because that's, of course, my nature. So I'll do my best. So as you see in front of you here, we have a lot of terms which get into not only the finance world, but into the planning world when it comes to student counts and pupil counts. And so I'm just going to walk you through briefly what some of the terms mean. And there is a whole Mars manual out on the state website if you're ever bored and want to read all the different flags and factors. But just for basics here, the average daily membership, as you can see there, is just the portion of the school year which a student's enrolled over a specific time period. So it's basically the days enrolled divided by your total instructional days. So that's your average daily membership. That comes into play a little bit more as we get into adjusted pupil units, which is next. And that's our primary driver when we use a lot of the school funding formulas in the legislature, there's the pupil count that's used. And that's weighted by grade level. And you can kind of see off to the right here, a 1.0 adjusted pupil unit. That's grade K5. And then a 1.2 is 612. And there's some other weighted ones. We do now get voluntary pre-K revenue. That was School Readiness Plus before. That was weighted at 0.6. And there's other factors there too, but those are just some of the basics. And again, those are adjusted to reflect the students that we serve. Then you go a little bit further down here, and that's resident adjusted daily, average daily membership. And so those are the public school students who live within the boundaries of the district. That is our October 1 enrollment count that comes into play. But also another important factor is our residential pupil units. That drives your transportation sparsity. It also drives the district's aid levy split for our local optional and referendum revenue. That's a large piece of our levy when we get to presenting in another month or so what our referendum revenue calculations are. So that's a larger pupil count, as you'll see on one of the slides coming up. So some of the key funding components here, like Carissa mentioned, students matter. The pupil count is a main component of most of our funding calculations. There are very few that don't somehow indirectly tie to some pupil count, somehow indirectly. Not all calculations use the same pupil count, however. Some use a residential count, some use the weighted average, some use an adjusted. So there are pages and pages of formulas. If you ever want to see all that, come see me. Attendance is different than enrollment, however. Attendance is managed. It is taken, daily through MARS. The enrollment of the student is the pupil count that drives our average daily membership. And for basic revenue and other funding components, certain grade bands are weighted again, as I had mentioned. The October count drives the compensatory revenue. It also drives your Title I. So those are counts that calculate that revenue for the next fiscal year. So this chart may be familiar to some. This was presented by our auditors last year. This is just a source for you to look back at past history of the district. What this is our total ADM and adjusted pupil units served. This does include our early childhood special ed. So those numbers in the blue and the yellow do include the ECSE counts as well. So it's not just K-12, it includes those numbers as well. And so we're going to just simplify this just for the Gen Ed formula allowance for 2025-26. There are multiple other formulas that come into play for general ed, overall general fund revenue. But just for that general ed allowance piece of that $7,481, that piece, how it can impact as enrollment shifts within a district. And we're just going to use our enrollment as an example. So there are a lot of other characteristics of students across different districts that drive revenue. When people say, well, give us an average pupil funding amount, well, you can't really do that because it's not really representative of all students. Students are all different. You can see a District A, Student A, on the left side there could have an IEP, eligible for free and reduced lunch, driving compensatory Title I revenue. The district has a $500 adjusted pupil unit referendum. District B, Student B, could be eligible for multilingual learner services, is in an elementary sparsity district, and has a $1,000 adjusted pupil unit referendum. So on top of what we saw on the previous page, that's $7,481 base general ed allowance. So there are categorical funding pieces in addition to, you have your operating capital dollars, your gifted and talented allowance. So there are multiple funding pieces that are added with each student. So just to kind of highlight some of the, back in the spring here when we were looking at our 25-26 budget guidelines and assumptions, we did make some assumptions for the budget that we are in right now, the fiscal year, and we did take an enrollment at a point in time to do those allocations. That was pulled as of February 17th, and then we did take another picture in time on March 7th to do some allocations to schools. And what you can see there, down in that left-hand corner, are our numbers that we did project for the budget. Again, these are budgeted numbers that do drive the staffing allocations that we provide to sites. And you can see that total ADM at the time is 8,100. That is our K-12. And then that adjusted pupil unit is 8,660. So if you multiply that by just the general ed formula allowance, you'll see that it's just about $64.8 million that the students are generating in just our gen ed formula. So any fluctuation there can have a huge impact on the budget. Our budget's about $152 million in just the general fund. So students do drive, just in the general ed portion, a large portion of our revenue. And then the residential adjusted pupil units comes again into play when we do the levy. And the referendum, our local optional revenue, those levy components. And I'll be highlighting those again in another month or so when we start working on our levy from September through December. So I'll be highlighting those levy components. But you can see right now projections for fiscal 26, about 10,782 adjusted pupil units for the district residential enrollment, which will drive those levies. So again, just for projections, we did not include the ECSE and voluntary pre-K numbers in these totals right now. And then you can just see that's a page out of the budget book that was provided just as information for past trends. And again, just to highlight what MARS is, there's so many different acronyms and things like that. We just wanted to highlight that this is the Minnesota Automated Reporting Student System. It's statewide. It collects data required for multiple areas, and it's used by districts, charter schools, collects student data by multiple types of student data that flags different areas of a student. It generates state aid, levy calculations, the data, federal grant allocations, federal and state reports. It also, in the fall, the data is used for compensatory revenue, QComp, Title I, child count for federal special ed funding, and state assessment documents. And then at the year end, where we're kind of creeping into right now, as we begin our audit process, we are working through the general ed revenue, shared time aid, some of those other contract alternative aid, extended time revenue, and then English learner aid and charter school lease aid. There's a lot of different things. MARS is the driver of district revenue and reporting. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Mark to just highlight some of the planning.
So, good evening. As you
Really
can
quick,
see,
can I just really quick, does anyone have any questions on just that financial component before we move on? Yes.
I just want to confirm, I think your footnote answered my question, but can you go back 2 slides? The blue and yellow slide. Just want to confirm, these numbers are not comparable to the bottom left chart 2 slides down, right?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
So if someone was looking at this at home, playing along at home, saying 8,100, oh no, we're way down from previous
Correct.
at 8,900, whatever the number was.
Correct. This is K-12 only, and the previous slides from the auditors include our early childhood special ed, which is about
Numbers.
118 or so students.
And the numbers on the right are comparable to the chart?
You got it,
Okay,
yes.
so I just added those up by hand, like,
Correct,
by hand on my phone.
correct,
And it looks pretty even from last year.
correct,
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Actually, you could stay there. The one ADM average daily membership equals $7,481. That roughly, I know there's exceptions, is a student going to school all year, right? 100% of the time. Now, if he misses some days, goes off campus for a class, does that just start reducing the math?
Yes, depending on how many days the student is absent, that can over time start depleting that ADM. I believe there's a certain time period that, I think it's 15 days, where the student then starts, it starts counting against.
Oh, so they
the
reach
time.
that threshold and then the money
Correct.
starts
Continuous
diminishing?
days.
Correct.
Okay.
And then is that a whole day that they're missing, or could it be
They'd be 15 continuous days.
15 what?
15 continuous days and they get dropped.
Okay. So a kid that does one class PSEO
Yeah,
is still counted as a,
yeah, PSEO students are counted differently, but for attendance purposes, for ADMs, we take a look at if a kid is gone for more than 15 days at a time, they get dropped, and then we have to re-enroll them, and there's a process.
Correct.
anything else before we move on?
Great.
So as you guys see, enrollment is complex. So kind of Marie deals with the financial side of that, and then I take the school side of it and kind of look at planning, look at staffing and those sorts of things. So the first thing is just kind of understanding overall numbers. You know, every year you kind of look at where are we at district-wide in comparison to the last 10 years. Are we up, are we down, kind of where we were at. Looking at projections, you know, we have a TeamWorks demographic study the last couple of years to kind of, they have projections where we are within that. And then also within our market share, you know, what percent of the students that, you know, if there's 10,000 students and we have 8,000 kids, you know, we're at 80%. You know, where's our market share overall? And then you take that and kind of break it down, you know, by level. You know, what's the high school looking at? Where are middle schools at? Where are elementary schools at? And then you kind of break that down, looking individual buildings. And then also really diving down to what areas do we gain kids and what areas do we lose kids? Because, you know, I'm not going to get in the weeds here too much because, you know, like Marie, but I know we will in November, we come back. But we have a positive migration by grade level, which means you kind of do the math and you're looking at the charts, you're going to see graduating classes of 650, 675, 700 every single year. You're losing 700 kids, and you look at our kindergarten numbers and they're like 550. So right out of the bat, you're at a negative 150. But what that positive migration means is we gain kids, you know, from kindergarten to first grade, first to second, third to fourth. Our two biggest gain spots are our transition spots. So when you go from elementary to middle school, that fifth to sixth, and then the second one, we go from middle school to high school, that eighth and ninth. Those are the two big areas for us where we gain a lot of kids, you know, throughout the years. And we'll share more data on that as well, but that's kind of just how we use that overall big picture. Also, we use that to use some of our facility planning and capacity. Where are we at? Are schools that are getting up their capacity, lower in capacity? Do we have to do a boundary conversation? You know, I know we'll use this data when we do a boundary conversation this fall when we look at our 2 new elementary schools, but that data is used in our facility planning. The data is also used, as you heard as well, as staffing decisions. You know, staffing, we start projections in the middle of January, and we'll run projections all the way through the first month of school. And then we'll look at our projections to see, again, where are we at from last year, where are we at and compared to where our demographic study is. Every single, you know, at the beginning we do it monthly, but then as we hit the spring, we do it every week. We look at those numbers, look at our staffing, our class size ratios, all those sorts of things to come into play. And the real, you know, reason right now, we talk about how fluid it is before school starts, our numbers change day to day now. You know, so being a principal for many years, families are very quick to enroll in the new school. They may not be so quick to de-enroll from the school they come from. So historically, if you take our very first day of school over the last 10, 15 years, and you compare that to our October 1st numbers, we lose kids, and that's historically over years. So that's why we don't want to get into what our numbers look like right now, because they change on a daily basis. We want to make sure they get solidified with October 1st numbers, then we can have true apples to apples between previous years and where we're at right now. So we'll come back after our October 1st numbers, but just that's kind of the reason why we're not giving the specific numbers here as we sit in August. Looking at kind of timelines this year, we're going to do a really big marketing push here starting in November. And the reason November is big is that's when our kindergarten packets go out, and we'll talk about that here in a second, all the way through the summer. Boundaries in November and December are going to be a board conversation. I'll come back in September. We'll talk guiding change document around what we want those boundaries to look like. Once our October numbers hit, our staff or our committee is going to meet in October, and then in November we'll have an initial draft of what those boundaries look like here to you in November, and then we'll have some school board input as well as some community conversations throughout November, and then December we'll come back with our final recommendations. And then starting in February starts our staffing process all over again for next year. And so that February to April is kind of when we start staffing planning to when it gets rolled out and you do postings for staff. But obviously, you know, staffing starts in February and goes all the way through the beginning of school year. So Marie threw a bunch of different terms out at you, so you're going to get a few more here, I apologize. It's kind of, you know, a term overload. But just a couple things. So when we start talking these different terms, you have some context behind them. So, you know, there's resident versus non-resident. Resident means they live within our school district. Non-resident means they live outside of our school district boundaries. So like take a kid that lives in Woodbury. There's a portion of Woodbury that is in the Stillwater School District, and there's a portion of Woodbury that's in the South Washington School District. So just because a kid lives in Woodbury doesn't mean they're one or the other. That's where the resident and non-resident component comes at. Now take that same student in Woodbury who lives in South Wash, they can be an open enroll student. And what an open enroll student means is somebody who lives outside of our district. They live in Forest Lake, they live in White Bear, they live in Matamidi, and they want to come to our schools. They're choosing to open enroll into our schools. They become an open enroll student for us. Once they become an open enroll student, they are a pony, they become one of ours, but initially they are an open enroll student. The second term, which are interchangeable to some and get confusing, is an alternate enrollment. What alternate enrollment means, it's just elementary and middle school, but it's you attend a school outside your school boundary where you live in. So if you live in the Afton area and you choose to go to Lake Elmo Elementary, you'd be an alternate enrolled student to Lake Elmo because you live in the Afton boundary. Or you live in the Oakland boundary and you choose to go to Stillwater Middle School, or vice versa. So open is outside of the district or non-resident, and alternate is a resident student that's going to an alternate school than what they're boundary for based on their address. The second one is preschool registration. We do not get funding for preschool kids. So preschool kids is all run through community ed. The part where preschool is critical and vital for us is the retention rate that we get for our pre-K kids when they start with us, stay with us. I mean, the last, I don't know what, we have a number, like high 80s for those families that come to us as pre-K, then stay with us at kindergarten. Maybe not necessarily at that same school, but they're in our Stillwater Pony world and stay with us in our district. And then the next one is kindergarten enrollment. And there's a huge push and a huge process as those 5-year-olds are coming into kindergarten for the first time with a kindergarten welcome packet and a marketing campaign and different access points for students with orientation, as well as families with orientation, as well as some family parent nights to ask questions, mainly for a lot of those first-time families that don't have any kids. Those are very attended by first-time families coming into those pre-kindergarten orientation meetings and strategies that we have. So just looking off to the right, some of the key dates we have is there's not really a date for kindergarten to enroll, but we kick off mid-November by setting those packets out. And they'll kind of roll through January, but really they can roll through the start of school year. They can come at any time. The real key date is that open and alternate enrollment is January 15th. So what that means is, by law, we have to, it opens October 1st, it closes January 15th. So anybody who applies between that October, November, and January window, when January 15th comes, then they become in a lottery system, basically. And then there's different buckets that they come. So if, let's say there's 4 kids that want to go to Afton Kindergarten, if they're all within that October to January window, they're all considered in that same tier, that same bucket. If somebody applies on January 16th, then it's time, date, and stamped of when it's kind of first come, first serve. So that big window is really that we push is that January 15th. You'll also notice why boundaries, we want to have a boundary decision in January, so any of those affected students, affected families have time to, if they choose, to fill out that alternate enrollment form before that January 15th deadline comes, so they can be considered in that same pool. So that's kind of how all those timelines kind of mix and match together. Preschool runs a separate one. They have a mid-January date where they run their preschool enrollment as well. So I'm just going to kind of stop right here just through the enrollment pieces and see if there's any questions before I move on.
I want to make sure I heard this right. We offer preschool. They don't pay for preschool, but we don't get any ADM or anything for preschool?
So they do pay for it. It's a fee-based program through Community Ed.
Does it pay for itself? Does preschool, is there enough that they pay?
Through Community Ed.
Yes.
It's a separate
Yes,
fund.
it's self-sufficient through Community Ed. There are not any, K-12
There's no
dollars to
general
support that.
education dollars used for it.
Okay.
What we support is the classrooms. So when we look at a capacity of school, we'll take 2 classrooms set aside to give to preschool, and then they'll staff the teachers, they'll buy the supplies, all those sorts of things. But so we apply, we give them the space, they do all the funding to support the program.
Okay. All right, thanks, that helps.
Oh, yes.
Veering a little off topic, for transportation for the alternate enrollment and open enrollment, what is our responsibility there? Is there any?
So we do transport if they come to the nearest existing stop within that boundary. So take, kid lives at Oakland, wants to go to Stillwater Middle. We're not gonna pick them up for where they live at Oakland, and we're not gonna create a new stop for them at Stillwater Middle. But if they wanna get an existing stop within a route within Stillwater Middle that has room, they can get on a bus from there and do those, and get on that transportation from there. So there is an option, but they would have to drive to an existing location.
Fair enough.
And I just want to clarify something, and it's related to what Director Kelsenberg had said, but preschool is not a profit for us. I mean,
No.
we charge, what it costs to run is what we charge to families. Is that minus, I guess, any funding that we would get?
I would say that, I mean, I don't know the particulars within the community ed fund with it, but the general education fund from the school district receives no revenue from our preschool program.
And I think that's an important point, because I do know we had some fee increases.
The other thing, and help me out here, either Marie or Annette, do we have an allocation of voluntary pre-K dollars that, so we have voluntary pre-K money from the state that families can utilize if they cannot afford it. So that's another option for
Yeah, we
families.
currently have 42 seats, I think, Annette. Yeah.
Okay. So there is support available for,
families.
okay. Thank you.
All right, so now kind of shifting gears as we kind of look at heading into this year, looking into boundaries and looking into the future of kind of what are some of our housing trends moving forward. So we have 18 different communities and municipalities within our school district. So I visited with a few of the kind of the bigger ones just to kind of get a snapshot of where they're looking at from a housing perspective over the next 5-10 years. So the first one, obviously, if you look at Lake Elmo housing has continued to grow in the next 5 years. Talking with their planner, they have 2,039 new units that will be up over the next 5 years. 903 of those are single family and 1,136 are what they call multi-unit. Could be townhomes, could be apartments, could be condos. So as we move to a new school and a bigger school, and obviously you can just see when you drive around Lake Elmo, the houses that are popping up, we really have the space and capacity for that new school to accommodate that growth that's going on in that area. Also in Woodbury, we do have a small portion of Woodbury, and a lot of it is grown out, but there are two pretty big units going up here as we speak. There's about 500 units in Woodbury, and by units, they're kind of apartment, condo, townhome. The first one is a 252 unit on Karen Drive. So if you know where that Amazon warehouse is, kind of straight west of that, they have the framing up already on that development. And the other one on Manning Avenue, just south of that Amazon warehouse, is 237 units. It's the reserve at Prairie Meadows on Manning Avenue. So those will not be up and running for this school year, but again, as we open up the new schools in the 26-27 school year, the anticipation is both of those housing units will be up and running. We'll get students from those areas. So as we look at our boundaries, we'll definitely take those two units in consideration as we look at our boundaries at the south end of the district. The next one is looking at, I know you probably know the prison is closing in Bayport. And so over the next 5 years is what does that look like in Bayport and what does that impact have on housing? So in talking to the Bayport officials, they have 500 new units that they need to add in their comp plan. And so they're looking at maybe does that go where those 500 units are? Kind of just ballpark numbers, 200 of those would be single family and the other 300 would be multi-use, whether that's apartments, townhomes, condo, et cetera. But possibly could be looking at that space for future growth within the Bayport area.
How big is that development going up on the hill right next to the school?
And so the second one that they're going at, it's a property just southeast. It's adjacent to the new school in Bayport. Or excuse me, the southwest corner. There's 105 units going in there. There's 35 homes and 70 apartments. And so they're going to start grading this fall. And then next spring is they're going to start construction of those units. So those probably be around the 26, 27, or maybe the year after. So shortly, there's going to be another 100 new houses in the Bayport area. Continuing on the south end in Afton, there's not a lot of growth there. And talking to them and looking ahead to their 2050 comp plan, currently they have 3,100 population. And now they're looking to add 400 total people to make it 3,500. And they're still going to continue with the single family on large lots, and they don't anticipate that changing. So looking from a Afton perspective, kind of that housing seems very steady in that area. And then looking in the Stillwater and talking to the Stillwater folks, they don't have any big changes anticipated. They said there's 2 possible units on Manning. If you're heading north on Manning, total possible 70 units, but those aren't even in development or even conversation phases. Those are things just down the road. And the only other potential that they even talked about, and it's not even official yet, and they don't know if it's going to happen, but there's conversations of annexing that property south of 36 on Manning, kind of where people are talking that new Hy-Vee to go, of possibly annexing that into Stillwater and then having a Hy-Vee or whatever's going to go there, and there could be some housing development around that area in the near future, but there's nothing set in stone or concrete in that area. So very stable in the Stillwater and surrounding areas. So it obviously isn't a complete list of everywhere we're at, but just wanted to give you a snapshot of some of the bigger areas and developments happening within our school district.
The other thing of note over on Manning there, of course, is Lakeview Hospital's building a $450 million, $500 million, somewhere in that range of hospital. And that is going to, I'm sure, be a driver of growth for the community. So, and those folks are gonna have to have somewhere to live too.
Might that be a driver of some housing turnover? Because I know in our last enrollment presentation from TeamWorks, they talked about that's hard to predict, right? Like that housing turnover, but it is going to happen, and what could be a catalyst for that? I mean, is that a
I'm not sure if that would be a driver or not.
okay?
And then the other thing is, I don't know what the hospital's gonna do with the current hospital. So I mean, that, there may be a potential development site there for somebody.
Okay.
And looking at TeamWorks, just kind of a little more context to that. When looking at their data, they kind of have 4 different ranges from kind of conservative to more aggressive looking at enrollment based on different factors, and some of that you're talking about. So kind of the baseline is looking at birth, Washington County births and development that's active in terms of houses you can see being constructed right now as your baseline. And the second piece they look at it is where's future development? There's some farm field, there's some land that said, hey, maybe over the next 10 years, that could be something. And they include housing turnover, or you call generational shift or whatever, that people have lived there for 30, 40, 50 years, some of those areas that could be turned over. Also, they factor in market share. If we increase our market share, what could that look like? So there's different levels of how they kind of factor in, and we kind of try to navigate which one of the areas we see fit.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fascinating just to go back and review that presentation, so.
That is a great segue to my portion, which, when we talked about market share and what can we do to try to grow our enrollment. And so we have several strategies that we're already employing and some that we're talking about doing a little bit differently into the future. And one of our big focus areas is just on the customer experience and making sure that families who are here are having a great experience so that when they're out talking to their friends and neighbors, they can help us sell the district. That's the most powerful selling factor, is that word of mouth. So we are working really hard and creating some intentional system changes to be able to provide better customer service. I think the board's heard about a welcome center concept where we have really shifted our focus at Central Services to be working together as a team, not just departmented silos, but to think about how does transportation, nutrition services, community ed, communications, how do we all work together to make sure that we are creating a really seamless process for families from day one. When they go online to fill out that enrollment form, what does that process look like, and what can we do to make it easier and more friendly for them? So that's been a really positive thing. Just this summer, we've had extra staff on hand. We've had our community engagement specialists there to help when there's language barriers. We've had nurses there to help answer and get some of those health things moving for people. We've had transportation working. All these different people are in there during the summer to help families enroll. And so we're trying to figure out how we can keep that momentum going throughout the school year too, to really provide that good customer service experience and provide a good onboarding piece for families. And then to keep that customer service going as they get into the schools too. So we'll be talking to our schools about what does it look like when a family comes into the main office. If a family comes with questions, how quickly are we responding? What kind of service are we giving? So that's a really high focus area for us in the coming year. Marketing and communications is always something that we're doing. We're trying to make sure that we are providing good information to families, that we have resources available, that they understand what we have to offer, and frankly, that we're just telling a really positive story about what's happening here. So we are going to continue to expand our outreach to prospective families. Mark was talking about the development potential in the district. So one of the natural things that we've talked about is how do we connect with realtors? How do we connect with those developers so that as families are moving in, they are hearing from the realtor, who is that often first contact, especially for families brand new to the community. What kind of information can we provide to them so they can speak positively about what Stillwater has to offer? We talked about what's happening with kindergarten enrollment packets. How do we make that first connection to kindergarten or to preschool, even like the materials we send out for preschool? What does that look like? We do a lot of marketing already through our Early Childhood Family Center, because we know if we can get those kids from day one and those families, that they will stick with us. We send out bibs to every new baby that's born in our community and a little packet of information about early childhood classes, and we've seen a great return on that. So continuing to look at opportunities to do that outreach early and often. Another important thing, and one that maybe the board has some say in, is just looking at the programs that we offer. Where are there opportunities for us to expand programming that's going to be attractive to our families? We started talking about gifted this year. How can we make sure that we're providing really good gifted programming? What does it look like to expand things like immersion? We've talked about the high school schedule. Might that be something that draws families or makes them want to stay here? So those are great conversations if we can just be thinking about those opportunities that families need that might make them want to come here. We often talk about retention and making sure that people don't leave. Like, we want to prevent attrition, we want to keep people here. Some of that is customer service, some of it's programming, and some of it is just re-engaging. So if we're starting to hear from people who are having negative experiences, how can we reach out to them and make that work better for them? And even targeting families who have left. Like, maybe they left us, but we don't want to forget about them. So we are doing some targeted marketing to those families, saying, hey, we're still here, there's still opportunities for you, we'd love to have you back. And then finally, partnerships. What are the agencies around us, the childcare providers, the developers I mentioned? How can we make sure that we are staying connected with them and providing information so as they're having conversations, they can tell a good story about Stillwater? So that's a high level, but we are constantly thinking about more things that we can be doing in all of these areas, and something too that we are open to suggestions from the board and even from the community if they have ideas of things that we should be doing. One of my favorite things to do is watch other districts and see what are they doing, and sometimes borrow an idea that's working well in another district. So again, if you see things, you are always welcome to share that with us. So with that, I think we wanted to just provide some time and space for the board to have some conversations about what growth looks like from a board perspective. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Allison.
Yeah,
Okay.
just a quick question, just if anyone had any questions for Carissa and what she presented. Could you go back one slide? Do we have, or are there plans as enrollment becomes more of a focus, an intentional focus? Because it's always been a focus, but just being more intentional about it. Are there any plans to survey, I know you've done this in the past, surveying families, what are you looking for? You know, just kind of getting that two-way communication.
Definitely. I think there's a lot of different opportunities to do that. We've talked about exit surveys that we can do as people are leaving. One of the things I was just thinking about as we've recently hired a new position called the Welcome Center Coordinator. That person, which is actually being funded through community education, so thanks to them and all the work that Annette's doing to build that out. That person, one of the things I thought would be helpful is interview or survey recent enrollees to find out about their experience and like what brought them here, what were they excited about, what was the process like for them. So gathering that kind of feedback will be really helpful. And then we've done this numerous times in the past of reaching out to find out from families, what are they looking for, what's either the reason they came here or the reason maybe they chose something else. So we can always look to bring back some of that survey work too.
I think it's helpful to get that dialogue or that kind of that two-way feedback because, for example, I mean, I know anecdotally when I'm out in the community, I hear a lot about career pathways. It's something that we haven't had the luxury of really investing in considerably, but when you start looking at high school schedules, might that be able to build that out? And it's just it helps the board make more informed decisions. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I would love to hear more of that too, so.
Well, thanks for the question on discovery, because that was probably my first question was going to be what have we done to think about learning about this? So that takes care of that question easily, Pete. When it comes to suggestions or what are things I'm seeing, whenever I'm on social media, I get hit by a couple different school districts for highlighting their programs and their open enrollment opportunities for those programs. So that is something that, is that a question of demand or is that a question of programming? That's a separate conversation about are we meeting people where they need to be met or are we meeting their needs? Those are two different things. So that gets back to the discovery question. But I will say, making it personal again, whenever we highlight our sports, it has been a huge win for the kids that I coach and the kids that I'm around. You know, when the football team goes out and throws their little footballs in the parade, that is one of the best things that is probably the most my kid is excited about Stillwater schools. So that's something that, and whether this is kid-driven or parent-driven is a whole other question. But I love it. I was surprised that I didn't see much of a presence at the county fair. No, I didn't go, that's a big fair, so I didn't walk all the way around it. So we may have had a presence, I just didn't see it.
Early childhood was there during the Early Childhood Day, which I think was maybe Thursday or Friday. And we have done the fair in the past. The challenge with the fair, I think there's two challenges. It's a long commitment. You have to be there from, I think you said like Wednesday night all the way through Sunday. So just to find volunteers to staff the booth, it has to be staffed from like 10 in the morning until 6 or 7 at night. So that was our biggest challenge, was to find people who could actually be there during the summer during that time. Another challenge with the fair is there's so many people who come even from outside of the Washington County area that the families that we were connecting with, really a lot of them were like, yeah, I live way out in, Minneapolis or something. So it's like not necessarily our target audience. Certainly something we can think of. And I do think Early Childhood does an excellent job the day that they're there, and they take a lot of district materials with them. So they are promoting the district on the day that they're there. But definitely something we consider again in the future, but we did do that for a number of years.
And it's a targeted inflection point with that early childhood, so that makes a ton of sense. So, okay.
We just put up here kind of, again, thinking related to our governance role and how it relates to enrollment. I put up some conversation starters here with Carissa that we can talk about this. I do think this would be a time where just sharing, like Director Parker did, things that you're hearing in the community that, because we all have an opportunity to talk to families, and hopefully we're hearing, a lot about like what they love and what's working, and maybe some pain points that could be considered. But I think this is just an open conversation to say, like, for example, Parker's observations, people really talk about our sports, they're engaged with our sporting program, or, our community ed. I think that is huge, and just knowing the enrollment factor that we get a significant market share bounce in our favor if we can get them early. So having room, I think, in our new schools for preschool is something that, like, when we do that, to think policy-wise, like programming-wise. Other comments or just observations? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the sports thing, I know there's people that, sports get real once you get into 6th, 7th, and especially high school. So I think some people don't need to be in the school to be in that sports program. So that's just, I know enough anecdotally on those. But the point I was gonna make, cities, the market themselves, is great places, Stillwater especially. And what you're thinking of, the realtor aspect of it, you pull down on the menu, the city, the price, but school district is way up there, and then the city is way up there. But the cities market themselves, do we tie in with the cities at all? Because that is, somebody's looking for a place to move. Is it all tied together at all with the cities, or are it just separate efforts?
That's an interesting thought. We have really great relationships with all of our communities, so I've definitely had conversations with Lake Elmo. They have a communications person that we've talked about different strategies before, and Stillwater as well, but that is certainly an area we could look at what other opportunities might exist for kind of that cross-marketing.
One thing I thought, as a board, we're trying to create, I think, after a lot of destabilization in our school district, creating that stability. But then how do we share that stability and maybe some of the alignment of our systems? Like, how does that translate to what's important for a family? Because I hear all the time about our sports program, but I think we're doing some exciting things internally. I know it's maybe not as flashy, but relevant nonetheless, I think.
Well, just a couple things. You heard a gifted report a month or two ago, and we have some opportunities within our gifted delivery model, within clustering, within how we operate the middle schools, within our curriculum, within our professional development. You can look at the AU model. We have some opportunities in our curriculum there, in our professional development. And so when you talk stability, we've got a great team in place here. And the team is providing the stability for the systems within the district to develop. And I think historically, and in historic, I'll say 10-year time frame, AU has grown on its own. Gate has kind of done its own thing. And so now we are aligning district resources to support these programs. We will have a larger building for the AU program at Lake Elmo in the future. So as we strengthen the program there, as we strengthen clustering throughout the district, strengthen our middle school programs, we will have, I think the word of mouth will grow that these are really good things. And the same thing I think at the high school. I see that, you know, and you're going to have a report here, I think it's next meeting, on online learning. Okay, so what are we doing to meet the needs of our students at the high school, and how are we aligning our systems to support that? And it's those organic things that we are doing internally that are going to pay dividends for the district in the long run. Because right now I think we've had some really good people with some good ideas, but we have not put a systems arrangement around it. So my thoughts.
I appreciate that perspective, and I was kind of having similar thoughts around that we are really moving into a really kind of pivotal year this year, that we've got a lot of big changes coming in, and they're all things that were intentionally done from a board level, from a district level, administration, to really create student-centered programming and support through curriculum, and the bell-to-bell ban for cell phones. I mean, these things that aren't necessarily flashy, things that we can't really market as, ooh, exciting, or that quite frankly are controversial, that people are not sure if this is actually going to be serving their kids the way that, that we are hoping and anticipating that it will. So I think a lot, the next couple of years are going to really see how well this bears fruit. And I'm really excited to see that journey. And I also, in my own experience as a community member, really the biggest feedback I get from families is how much they love our teachers, and that they really know that they care, and that they really want their kids to be successful. And then the hard reality is it's usually followed by a but. And that but is, but I need more support for my kids. We need to have stronger reading curriculum. We need to have more supports in our schools. We need to have more space in our schools. So I know that our administration and this board has worked really, really hard to do the structural work to make those changes happen. But now it's kind of handing it over to our staff and really seeing how this plays out and how well they can champion and be not only navigating these changes, but then supporting our families through these changes well, because they really are looking to our teachers as leaders in this community. And if things are a little bumpy, which they absolutely will be, I really hope that our educators can navigate that gracefully and professionally and get our families through this challenging time, because it'll really strengthen our district. And I know that they can be the great leaders in this district too.
So thanks for the prompt. This was actually, I'm excited to have some of this discussion. So thank you for this all, and thank you for everybody's hard work. You know, it's a couple things that that I'm going to echo Director Hockert's excitement for what's coming down our pipeline. I think we have, and to echo Chair Sherman's words around stability. To me, we've stabilized a number of things, but we need to recognize that we have a significant amount of change that's still coming to our district. And to me, and this may be controversial, I'm not sure, but to me, how we build that trust with the district and with the community and with each other is through having critical conversations and through sharing data and through a deep analysis and deep conversation about what's going on. So to me, having that criticism or that critique or that acknowledging where problems happen isn't a sign of destabilization. It's a sign of building stability and building trust to acknowledge, like, hey, this is what's going on. Let's all learn, and then we can either choose to address it or choose not to address it. But if we to me, that's one of the reasons why I ask so many darn questions, is I think it actually helps, my goal is to help get to a point where while we're going through the stabilization process, we're building trust through that process by having as much transparency, or at least as much pressure testing as possible through that process.
I also think you're right on the key points for, I think there's opportunities, and I think I've shared this with Dr. Funk, where we can better support those new families coming in at those decision points, the transition points to both middle school and high school, and how to differentiate new families or families choosing us for the first time versus families that have been here through elementary experience or a middle school experience. Just knowing, it's interesting to hear that those are the points with our most, like an influx of students. So thank you for sharing that. And I also appreciate the class size conversation that you alluded to, because something I hear about often is class size and people being a little bit, not necessarily everywhere. And I think we did a survey within the district around the time of levy or bond or both or facilities, but I think it was specifically like 4th and 5th, and there were some pain points in certain grades that people felt. So I think that revisiting class size and reimagining how we do that could be a story to share, end up being a story to share. I know there's a lot of work, but that's class size is something that.
I guess two things. One, I have a lot of hope for Pathways to be able to help get us out into the community more. I mean, it has so much potential. It's like a local incubator for kids to find their way into a career, and to get the high school into the community and get that partnership with local businesses. So, I mean, I think that's something that hopefully happens just naturally, and that'll be great. And then, in the end, hopefully we're putting all of this structure in place so that you start getting measurable results, scores that you can point to and say, look, and then success breeds success, and the marketing takes care of itself because, everybody wants, Stillwater is a school district of choice based on these, maybe fallible, but measurable outcomes, so.
Thought in a different direction. Looking at the barriers question, one of the biggest challenges I have as a Woodbury family is the geographical, long, skinny location of our district, that we're just huge. And I think that creates some challenges, specifically in, Woodbury is a very suburban culture, and kind of that expectation of convenience and closeness, and there's a lot of competition in that area. So I feel like a lot of families really want to support public education, but they also want to feel like they are welcome and part of the school district. And in my own experience and hearing from neighbors, that's unfortunately not always what happens for the Woodbury kids. So just being mindful throughout our district, and I know it's never an intentional thing, but it's more of a on-the-ground thing, that are talking about maybe rivals in South Washington County using the Woodbury catch-all phrase is getting noticed by our kids and by our families and by our parents. So it is something that I think we can definitely work on because there's so many families in Woodbury that legit want to come here and are proud to be ponies and want to support it, and it feels like we're not always welcome. So I think that's just something to be mindful of. I know it's not always intentional, and I get the school rivalry thing, but it is definitely an area we could work on.
And in a high growth area.
Yes, and it's a very high growth area. So we have a lot of opportunity there to capture and make those kids feel welcome and those families feel welcome. They feel like they're kind of on the bubble of not really welcome in South Wash because we're 834, and then we're also on the edge or towards the southern edge. And Mark, you know this for the Brookview background, so it's not new, but just something to be mindful of.
Thank you. I will also say, kind of piggybacking off of that, is after some painful school consolidations. I think that re-engaging with families in those areas more intentionally, because I remember being at a ECFE event and there were there was a young family that stands out to me, and I know you were with me, Director Hockert, who they were from Marine, and they were just floored by the services and the opportunities, and they understood the reasons for the decisions that were made, and they were very receptive. So I think that it's that balance of trying to re-engage with maybe families who have felt hurt by some decisions that were made in the past, predating anyone here. So just to kind of keep that mindfulness. And then I'm always thinking policy. Not to and so I guess, and I would love the superintendent and staff's thought on this, but I don't know when we do this, but in terms of policy, that's what we're here for, I thought the two policies that stood out in my mind that haven't been revisited or visited in as long as I can remember is both graduation requirements and grading policy. And how can we maybe as a board and as an administrative group have conversations about what are our requirements for graduation? Do we need to change them? Are they?
Well, I think just as the high school talks about potential schedule options, you're going to need to look at your graduation requirements related to that. And again, as the state comes in and continues to mandate different courses that be taught, we'll have some opportunities there. So I think that happens naturally. I think the piece, the growth option is not necessarily the graduation requirements, it's the graduation, or it's the high school opportunities that we were able to have for kids, which will, in the end result, it'll end up with the requirements. But, and I heard it from Parker and I heard it from Pete, and I hear it living here, okay? And, last year, at the start of the school year, I stood up in front of the collective group, and I went through, 3 slides of all the different championships we won in different sports and activities. All right, it was just champions, 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 champions. And that's great, okay? But at the same time, all right, what are we doing in other areas outside of the athletics to be successful and to promote the district? And I can name different districts within the state of Minnesota, that do different things and they're known for it, all right? The challenge that I think we have as a district is, what are we known for besides our great music programs and our great athletic programs?
I was going to say, I was going to put the plug in that our music programs, our theater, programs are top-notch. I mean, you go to some of those plays and choir concerts, and it's.
And our fine arts in general, not just music.
Yep.
But from an academic angle, from just a pure academic angle, what are we known for here in Stillwater? And so, there's a potential opportunity there.
I agree with you.
So there's 17 people in this room right now, probably 45 people watching online. And so we could sell to this small group of people, but the people that really sell our district are the staff in our district. What do we have, 800 staff, teachers, paras, all the support. And so we could have a lot of enthusiasm here, but that enthusiasm also has to be sold to the staff, because then in turn, they multiply that by all the people they interact with. And maybe we're doing that, but I want to say it here that we want to get that positive message out, not just here at a board meeting, but further out. And that's from administration to staff, from us to staff, once that spreads, it ripples out further and further. So I want to build that in messaging.
Any other or suggestions or opportunities. I do think that, and I know that you do this, and I would love to hear when people do leave. I'm sure it's a lot of we're moving, we're doing, but there might be some good data in some of that exit that you could say, well, you didn't have this, or you didn't have that, like, again, that critical eye of, I know so many things we do well. And I would encourage us as we kind of have some of these changes, like with curriculum. I mean, that's a significant, our investment in curriculum has been significant, Dr. Funk, since your administration took over. And I think that from a community standpoint, I mean, we looked at a lot of curriculum that hadn't been touched. And so as we continue to maintain that focus as a board, that focus on professional development, that focus on, I forget the 3 areas, curriculum, I forget the third always, but there's that when you first came into the district. And I have that in my head in a lot of ways in terms of where is our priority from an allocation of resources.
From a board perspective, just thinking about the 6th bullet up there, from accountability and monitoring, do we want to have periodic, quarterly, half-yearly, whatever the right number is, of updates on our enrollment, on our market share, on, I'm not sure what other metrics we'd want to look at in this, but, open, or puts and takes from, or who are we losing from think from a sporting perspective, who are we losing from a recruiting perspective, and who are we winning from a recruiting perspective? If I was a sports team, am I winning my home dirt, and who am I pulling in? Do we have that sort of set up as a procedural metric to already have accountability?
Do you want to?
Time and granularity. Okay, so we already provide the board monthly enrollment updates. That we, every single month, we get an enrollment update, and you can see the fluctuation where we are current this year, this month, where we were last year, this month. So we get that already. The piece of where people are going or why, that's a little bit more difficult. We could probably get to that. We can get to that on an annual basis for sure, but it's getting it just in time like that is we don't have the data, and I don't think we've got the people to just be on top of it like that. But the other piece is, I mean, and again, I think probably November, we've got it on the calendar that we're going to take a look at our board committees. Okay, and so I can share with you, different boards have different committees, and I'm going to just throw one out here just based upon your question. So, do we have a monitoring committee? So the monitoring committee would be taking a look at, okay, what are we going to monitor? All right, we're going to monitor test scores. We're going to monitor student enrollment. We're going to monitor mental health. I mean, so there could be metrics that we provide the committee at the board. I mean, so it's not, because I don't think we have the time as a board to be looking at these things, but this is something that it's a potential that a subcommittee of the board could take a look at that, and then we could report that out to the whole board. So that's an option. There are, I think the bigger question is, what are we going to monitor? You as a board, okay, what's important to us to take a look at as we're going down the road here? I think that's the bigger question.
Some of this information, I think, might be part of the vision card and the strategic plan that we're working on too. So we've had some conversations about at what points do we provide you updates on our strategic plan action cards and kind of how they're tying in with the metrics is where our vision card is kind of where we have those metrics. So we've had conversations about providing more regular reports throughout the year to the board.
Because we get them probably, 3 times a year at our level from the buildings. I think we reported sometime this last winter, we reported to the board on where we were at. But that could be another part of that.
This is all great. I also think that just being more intentional as we're with outside organizations, just to see what, like Chris, I was glad that you stated that. Just what are other districts doing? What are some other stories? It just gives us good questions when we're networking with other board members. Hey, what's working? What's not? And one thing I've heard a lot of feedback within professional associations that I have is people are really interested in our cell phone policy and that we took a stand. And I think that that could be depending, I mean, I know it's going to be bumpy. I know it's going to be, it needs some time and some implementation. But I've had several people say you're doing the right thing. And boy, I wish our district would do that, even as I'm outside, because I'm also in Woodbury. So I talk to, I kind of cross over into some other districts pretty easily, like within a couple blocks. And a lot of families do like that. They say, boy, I wish that was being done where I am at. And so, again, I know that's time and it's letting change kind of settle. But I think there is some opportunity there. And then just seeing our story, sometimes just having a story of why, and I don't know if that has to be, some schools have, come in and get to know our district nights, but maybe in today's day and age, it can be a video or something that just is like a story. I know that, I don't know, but I do see other districts that do that.
Yeah, I think one thing that kind of stands out for me, if I have conversations with people in the public or at other types of professional engagements, one thing I'm really proud of is that I see us as a district having a lot of meaningful, disruptive change. Change is hard, but there's a purpose, and we're looking at ways of saying this is what's been done in the past, but this is maybe better ways we can do it moving forward to better meet the needs of students based on the new reality. And I think that's just such an important thing. I mean, the business world, that's normal. You innovate or you die. So I think as a public school, we're no different. If anything, it's actually, I think, a more challenging environment than the private sector because we're working in a very tight sandbox of state funding and ADP and all the things that Marie loves to get into. Bless her heart. But it's just something where I think, I know change is hard at the front end, but it's for the better. It's about preparing our students to be future ready, to put in the best position to be able to have the skill sets to be able to pivot in life, because that's what life is about. And so that's what I'm excited about. And I think that's, as we look back to Chair Sherman's point, as other districts are looking at us for the cell phone policy or the calendar change or the bell start, these are all meaningful, disruptive changes. And I believe they will move the needle. And I remember Principal Bach had talked about, as I think Director Kelsenberg had mentioned, how do we know which of these changes actually are going to materialize the benefit? And he had a great answer. He's like, does it really matter? If it moves the needle, does it matter if it's this or that? Because it's all working in coordination to a greater purpose of what we're trying to do. So to me, that's what I see of kind of the, what I'm excited about, and I think what people will look to us and say, yeah, it makes sense. And we have to be able to, have the will to see it through and know that it's all for the kids. And so that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I'd like to just add, I think another thing you could go back and just highlight as a board too is you've had multiple principals now, I think, present their schools to you in some of the highlights of things they've done in their schools, and just going back and focusing on that. And they've also focused on their pain points too. There may be some things in there that could be potential barriers to certain things too. But there's also highlights to their schools that may be marketing opportunities for the district as well. So just kind of ideas.
Very good point. That's a very good point.
And I think there are some possible future presentations yet to do. But I mean, those are things that we are also doing as a district to highlight each school for potential families. So.
I think that's a really good point. Two of the things that always stuck out for me in those updates were what Afton Lakeland is doing with data and what Lily Lake has done with reading. So looking at those more closely and thinking about how those can maybe be adopted or looked at it more broadly, I think is a really good idea. Yeah.
I agree. And I do know that it's always a double-edged sword, right? Because we have a lot of really good things going on in our schools, and we're making investments in the right places. And at the same time, I feel like I do need to be honest, and kind of like what Director Parker was saying. And one thing that does come up repeatedly with me in the community is some of our MCA scores. And I think that we would need to and I usually pivot with that and say, and talk about the curriculum investment that we've made and how it was, we hadn't done that for decades. I think when you had done the analysis, Dr. Funk, and how we're investing in professional development. And I tell that story. I also tell the story of like, there's more than just an MCA. That's one test, one day. And there's a lot of other really indicators to watch and daily interactions in the classroom. But I do think that is out there. So that's why the strategic plan focus, I think, is so important, to demonstrate that we can kind of move that needle as now we have that baseline of new curriculum. And I know it all takes time, but just thought I would share that. But I agree. I mean, I think there's just a lot to tell in our district that's going really well in a lot of what we do. And I love your suggestion, Maria, of looking at those presentations, because I have at home like my list of common themes, like with staff turnover was one of them on the side of how it's a challenging thing in schools. Also our principals' time, that they want to be more academic leaders. I have kind of that list. So things that we can be thinking about as we're making decisions on behalf of the district. Well, I appreciate the conversation and just the sharing, and we'll look for more information on enrollment when we get some numbers finalized, but this has been a good discussion, so I appreciate your time and effort.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. We are moving into closed session next. The next item on our agenda is a closed session pursuant to Minnesota State Statute 13D05, Subdivision 3. A public body may close a meeting to evaluate the performance of an individual who is subject to its authority. The public body shall identify the individual to be evaluated prior to a closed meeting. The only employee we have is Superintendent Dr. Funk, so we will be going into closed session to do that review. I will make a motion to move us into closed session. Can I get a second?
So moved.
Great. Director Thielander with a second. All those in favor of moving to closed session, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are moving to closed session.